Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Taylor Wright. Taylor Wright was born on April 23, 1988. Friends and family described her as energetic and full of life. She was kind and empathetic, spending most of her life in North Carolina as she pursued her American dream. Taylor married Jeff Wright and later had a son named Drake. She earned a college degree and worked as an officer at the local police station, where she solved numerous crimes and was respected. To the outside world, Taylor's life seemed perfect. She had a loving husband, a son, and a respected job. However, the reality was that not everything in her life was as idyllic as it appeared. Taylor's close friends knew that she smoked marijuana occasionally, but she kept it a secret. During her time in the police force, she used it to manage stress and her heavy workload. She claimed that she didn't smoke regularly, only occasionally to relax after a long day. However, Jeff found out about her secret and left with her son after their divorce. This made Taylor realize that she needed to change her life. In 2016, Taylor decided to start over and moved to Pensacola, Florida, a small resort town with a population of about 52,000. She likes the warm, comfortable atmosphere here. After quitting her job, she began working as a private investigator. Armed with the knowledge and experience from her previous job, she was eager to apply her skills to help her clients. Taylor divorced her husband, but faced two major challenges: child custody and financial issues. Court proceedings to divide assets and child custody were ongoing. It was a complicated divorce, and despite her efforts to reach an agreement, they were unable to reach an agreement, which dragged on. In September 2017, frustrated by financial disputes, Taylor withdrew money from her bank account without telling Jeff. The money, which was her personal savings, was something she did not want to share with Jeff. After withdrawing the money, she gave it to a friend to keep. One of Taylor's friends, Ashley MacArthur, is the main character in this story. Taylor has known Ashley, a forensic scientist, for over a year. Although it was a relatively short period of time, they became very close, to the point where Taylor entrusted Ashley with a large sum of money. Ashley agreed to help and was supposed to deposit the money in a safe deposit box, keeping it a secret from Jeff until Taylor was ready to use it. However, she soon needed money to pay for a lawyer. When Taylor reached out to Ashley, she noticed that Ashley always had excuses for delaying the return of the money or only giving her small amounts. Ashley claimed she was having trouble withdrawing the funds or that there were issues with the bank. During this time, Taylor grew increasingly suspicious that something was wrong and worried that her money might have been spent. Despite Taylor's persistent requests for the full amount to be returned, Ashley continued to provide various excuses. On the evening of September 7, 2017, Taylor and her friend Cassandra Waller went out to dinner. Cassandra had quickly become close friends after Taylor moved to the area. Cassandra was new to the city and Taylor suggested they rent an apartment together. Cassandra, a kind teacher, agreed. Over time, they developed a strong friendship. During dinner, Taylor shared her financial concerns, especially about her friend Ashley, who she believed was intentionally delaying repayment of money. Taylor expressed concern that Ashley might have spent the money or not want to pay it back. This made Taylor very anxious and stressed because she desperately needed the money to hire a good lawyer. That evening, Cassandra comforted Taylor, reassuring her that the matter would eventually be resolved, although she also had doubts about whether the money was still there. Taylor mentioned that she had scheduled a meeting with Ashley the next day, September 8, to go to the bank together. On the morning of September 8, as Cassandra was getting ready for work, she said goodbye to Taylor. And on her way out of the house, she saw Ashley's sitting car in the driveway. They were finally ready to take care of their banking issues. The girls said goodbye, and Cassandra drove off to school. Later that day, Ashley called Cassandra to inform her that she and Taylor had decided not to go to the bank, opting instead to go to the farm. This confused Cassandra, as she knew Taylor was in dire need of money. The night before, Taylor had been very stressed and emotional at dinner, eager to get her financial situation sorted out. Ashley explained that she and Taylor had been discussing Taylor's struggles. Ashley suggested that horseback riding might help Taylor improve spirit, therefore them to cancel their bank trip and plan an alternative vacation. This explanation seemed strange to Cassandra, but she wished them luck anyway. However, after the call, Cassandra attempted to contact Taylor but received no response to her calls or messages. Later on, Cassandra received a text from Taylor, who said she couldn't talk at the moment but would call back later. Taylor explained that she was feeling uncertain and depressed due to her divorce and the changes in her life, and that she was going out of town for a few days. Cassandra believed her and decided to give her friend some space. A couple of days later, Cassandra reached out again, asking Taylor to return home as soon as she could. After that, she received no response. As the days passed, Cassandra tried to contact Taylor several times, but Taylor continued to ignore her calls and texts, even though some of the messages were marked as read. Taylor did not return home, and all of her belongings were still intact, which made Cassandra increasingly worried about her friend's safety. Cassandra wanted to see Taylor to make sure she was okay. Their neighbor said that Taylor had used drugs in the past and that she could become withdrawn during difficult times. With the difficulties Taylor was having, Cassandra was worried that she might relapse. Cassandra was feeling anxious. A week had gone by with no news, and waiting seemed pointless. Concerned, her reached out to the police. She told the officers that something was off, as Taylor was behaving unusually and had completely disappeared without explanation. In their shared apartment, there were numerous personal items belonging to Taylor that she would have taken if she had moved. There was no valid reason for her to ignore her friend's calls. Until now, Taylor had never done anything like this. After hearing Cassandra's story, the police took note of the unusual aspects of the case. The police focused on the time frame of her disappearance. Naturally, they interviewed Cassandra first, since she lived in the same house as Taylor and had a close relationship with her. Meanwhile, searches were conducted in the apartment that Cassandra shared with Taylor. In the apartment, the police found Taylor's identification, some cash, and an unloaded revolver. Cassandra explained that they kept weapons in the house for self-defense, but they had never used them. There was nothing else suspicious found, but it was evident that Taylor could not have left for an extended period without her documents, money, and belongings. Cassandra was questioned several times, and she quickly felt that the police suspected her and shifted their focus to proving her innocence. Despite this, she continued to cooperate with the investigation because she wanted to find out the truth. Eventually, she was ruled out as a suspect. Police initially focused on Jeff, given their contentious divorce, which involved the division of assets and custody of their son. Jeff certainly had a strong motive to harm Taylor, but police quickly determined that he was in North Carolina at the time of her disappearance and had not left the city. He had recently remarried and was focused on building a new life, with little regard for his ex-wife. Family members confirmed that despite their divorce, Jeff and Taylor remained on good terms for the sake of their 6-year-old son. Jeff was known to be non-confrontational and had never harmed Taylor. He was not even aware that she had withdrawn money and tried to conceal it. Therefore, there was no reason for him to be angry with her, prompting police to immediately eliminate him as a potential suspect. The police then decide to talk to Ashley, whom Cassandra had mentioned. Her behavior is very unusual. They bring her in for questioning, and the police quickly notice that she is even flirting with the police, which shows that she is not at all concerned about her friend's disappearance. Ashley seems to believe that Taylor is okay. She knows that Taylor has been addicted to marijuana in the past and thinks that Taylor is not really missing but is simply indulging her addiction. Ashley speculates that after receiving some money, Taylor relapsed and went off to use. However, this explanation seems unconvincing because Ashley had previously told Cassandra about the trip to the farm, but she didn't mention that. Only when the police press her does Ashley reveal that they went to the farm because Taylor wanted to relax. During the trip, Taylor confided in her about the stress she was under from the divorce proceedings, which had affected her mental health. After some time, Taylor expressed that she was tired and wanted to go home. She called an Uber and left. Ashley reported that she hadn't seen or heard from Taylor, despite making several attempts to call her. The police were aware of a money issue that Ashley was supposed to resolve but was avoiding, leading them to suspect she was hiding something. Suddenly, Ashley started mentioning a safe deposit box and money, claiming she had no knowledge of the funds being talked about. At this point, the police were confused as there was no clear information regarding the money. Police then decided to look into text messages between her and Taylor. They discovered numerous discussions about money, with Ashley frequently postponing meetings and transferring money. In the text messages, they talked about going to the bank on September 8th to withdraw money. Police requested footage from cameras near Taylor's home. After reviewing the videos, they found the women near Taylor's apartment, which matched Cassandra's earlier account. Ashley was in a car in front of the house when Cassandra left. Taylor then left the house and left with Ashley. Using geolocation, police tracked Taylor and Ashley's movements. Police reviewed surveillance footage from across the city and saw them buying beer and food, which appeared to be normal. However, no further information about their whereabouts was available after that. Inconsistencies began to appear between Ashley's testimony. However, the police decided to release her because they did not have enough evidence against her at that time. After that, Ashley contacted the police station almost daily to check on the progress of the investigation and to see if they had any new information. She wanted to help and often recounted the details of that day, as well as places where Taylor might have gone. During the conversation, she suggested that police should search alleys and talk to people who are selling illegal substances. She believed that Taylor was simply depressed and using drugs uncontrollably, and she repeatedly urged the police to follow up on this lead. She also talked about some suspicious suspects that she had seen with Taylor. Despite Ashley's best efforts to appear concerned, but police are still investigating her connection to Taylor's disappearance. Video evidence shows that Ashley visited the bank after Taylor went missing. During that visit, she withdrew money from Taylor's card. Police are particularly concerned about any potential conflict between Ashley and Taylor. Ashley had a strong motive for her actions, the $34,000 in question. It is suspected that she deliberately delayed her response because she did not want to return the money. Fearing that Taylor might report this to the police, Ashley may have decided to eliminate her friend. With Taylor missing for such a long time, there are concerns that she is no longer alive, but this needs to be confirmed. Ashley had a significant advantage. She worked for the police department and was married to a former deputy chief of the Battery Falcons. This created a difficult situation for the officers, who could not be sure of their safety while investigating her. As a result, they chose to keep the investigation secret. In October, Ashley was called in for questioning again. As the case progressed, documentary and circumstantial evidence accumulated that linked her to Taylor's disappearance. The police noticed a marked change in Ashley's behavior. She went from being outgoing and flirtatious to being withdrawn and clearly anxious. By this time, the police had verified that most of her previous statements were lies. They presented her with clear contradictions in her testimony and began investigating the cashing of hidden checks, which were likely to have forged signatures. At the very least, this could lead to accusations of fraud, but there could be darker motives behind these actions. Ashley initially claimed that she and Taylor had gone to East Milton, where they allegedly spent the day at a farm with animals. They were last seen on surveillance footage at 11:45 a.m., which was the only footage of Taylor alive during her initial interview. She was recorded on surveillance cameras in various locations throughout the day, but she was seen alone. As the police continued to talk to Ashley, she became increasingly nervous. Her answers became more confused, and she struggled to explain the discrepancies in her story. The police obtained a search warrant for the farmhouse but found no evidence in the large area. They then asked about the checks to determine if they were indeed counterfeit. If the checks were genuine, that would mean that Taylor was still alive when Ashley went to the bank, but Ashley could not give a clear answer. She just said that the checks could be real. While examining the geolocation data on Ashley's cell phone, police discovered that she had been staying at Britt Road for an extended period of time. This was another farm owned by her family. In fact, they had been there for several hours before Taylor disappeared. Ashley again confirmed that Taylor was going to buy a truck from a dealership. But this time, she added new details to the story. She said that Taylor was going back to the farm. Ashley had not mentioned these details in her earlier statements, claiming that Taylor had asked her to keep the incident private. Ashley believed that Taylor was still alive and would come back, so she did not want to harm her reputation in front of the police. However, she lied multiple times, leading the police to lose trust in her. The police were very interested in the Ashley family farm in Britt Road. It was a large, isolated area that would have been a fit place to commit the crime and cover it up. During their questioning, the police noted another strange aspect of Ashley's behavior: why she did not contact the police immediately when Taylor promised to return but did not show up. It was clear that Taylor was in trouble and needed help. Although Ashley tried to show concern to the police, she made no effort to find Taylor. Why did she wait until she was called in for questioning to show concern? These questions remain unanswered, but the police believe that Ashley was withholding important information. After her trip to the farm with Taylor, Ashley frequently called the police station to check on the investigation into her friend's disappearance, especially after her initial interview. She was anxious to know if she was being considered a suspect. After her conversation with the police, Ashley realized that she was the prime suspect in the case. She decided to ask for a lawyer, which ended her visit to the police station. On the morning of October 19, 2017, Ashley returned home. That afternoon, police obtained a search warrant for the farm where she and Taylor had been staying. Specially trained dogs were deployed in the search, and within 2 hours, they discovered a suspicious burial site. It was a small pit that appeared to have been recently dug and had been covered with concrete. A human skull was found in a shallow grave, along with other remains that had been hastily buried in the dirt and construction debris. The victim died from a gunshot wound to the head. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, the body could not be identified at the scene. However, based on clothing and jewelry, it is believed that it was Taylor. An autopsy confirmed that the body was Taylor Wright, 30. The identification was completed using dental records and DNA analysis. Ashley was arrested that evening, October 19, 2018, and charged with premeditated murder. Ashley's defense attorney believed in her innocence, but the abundance of circumstantial evidence made it challenging to convince the jury of her non-involvement in the crime. The attorney focused on Ashley's psychological profile, portraying her as sweet, pretty, and a police officer, which seemed inconsistent with being a violent criminal. Friends and family described Ashley as quiet, modest, and incapable of murder, especially when considering her physical attributes. In contrast, Taylor was physically stronger, leading the prosecution to question the defense's arguments. The lawyer developed his strategy based on the fact that the police lacked direct evidence to prove Ashley's guilt. There was no murder weapon, no witnesses, and no DNA linking Ashley to the body. This made it difficult for the prosecutor's office to connect Ashley to the crime. One witness was the victim's ex-husband, Jeff. He stated that he reached out to Ashley a few days after his Taylor went missing, trying to locate her to address some matters related to their marriage and divorce. Jeff contacted Ashley via social media. She claimed that the last time she saw Taylor was when she was exchanging money. She expressed concern about whether Taylor had arrived safely. This was a new detail that Ashley had never mentioned before, leading the police to realize that she was a pathological liar who had deceived everyone around her. Although Jeff was initially investigated and cleared as a suspect due to a solid alibi, he still had a strong motive. The lawyer attempted to redirect the jury's attention to Jeff's possible involvement in his ex-wife's murder. But these efforts were unsuccessful. The testimonies from Ashley's close friends greatly influenced the jury. They revealed that the Ashley was not as she seemed. She frequently visited a strip club. Bartenders and staff stated that just before Taylor went missing, Ashley spoke negatively about Taylor. Later, a gun associated with Taylor's death was discovered in Ashley's house. After new evidence emerged, the Ashley admitted to spiking Taylor's beer with a strong substance. However, when Taylor took a sip, she noticed the drink tasted odd and clearly spoiled. She spat it out and refused to drink any more, which likely led to the failure of Ashley's poisoning plan. Despite this admission, Ashley denied any involvement in the shooting of her friend. The prosecution argued that she had a strong motive. Ashley was holding on to a large sum of Taylor's money and was delaying returning it. Taylor desperately needed the money to pay her lawyer, so if Ashley delayed paying, Taylor would likely report the matter to the police. This situation gave Ashley a motive to get rid of her friend. The police later discovered the reason for the delay in returning the money. Ashley had been secretly having an affair with a man named Brandon, without her husband's knowledge. It was revealed that she had spent all of the money on Brandon, including giving him a motorcycle just weeks before Taylor went missing. This coincided with the time she had received money from Taylor. In court, Brandon admitted that Ashley had frequently given him expensive gifts, but he did not know where she got the money, as she had no other source for such a large sum of money. The police tracked Ashley's movements and discovered that she had gone to Home Depot after Taylor went missing. The police spoke to a sales clerk who confirmed that Ashley had purchased several bags of quick-drying solution. When the substance found in Taylor's grave was tested, it matched the quick-drying compound mentioned by the hardware store employee. This suggests that Ashley attempted to quickly hide Taylor's body on the farm to avoid detection. However, Ashley's attorney argued that she was not physically able to carry the heavy bags, dig the grave, and move Taylor's body. The jury then deliberated for about 4 hours and found Ashley MacArthur guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison, eligible for parole after 25 years. She also served an additional 7 years for fraud related to Taylor Wright's finances. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Kelsey Turner. Kelsey Turner was born on March 5, 1993, in Norfolk, Virginia, the second child of Samantha Ingram, who aspired to be a model and dancer. Growing up, Kelsey had an older brother named Colin. After her birth, her family moved to Jonesboro, Arkansas, a small industrial town where Kelsey spent most of her childhood. However, her family life was turned upside down when her parents divorced after a few years. After the divorce, her father returned to Virginia. Kelsey grew up into a beautiful young woman with a perfect figure and attractive features that could easily lead to a modeling career. However, she found school unappealing and enjoyed socializing with friends, dating, and attending various social events. Her ultimate ambition was to become famous, appearing on magazine covers, giving interviews, and walking the red carpet at major events. Despite her ambition, Kelsey had no real talent and had to rely on her youth and looks to survive. While in high school, she began attending modeling auditions in hopes of starting a career. Her mother, Samantha, who dreamed of becoming a model, was happy to support her daughter in pursuing her dream. Unfortunately, Kelsey's modeling career was limited to a few small photo shoots for clothing catalogs. Kelsey married Jerry Turner at the age of 18 when she was already pregnant. Their daughter, Beverly, was born shortly after the wedding. However, the marriage did not last long and ended in divorce. By the age of 20, after giving up her modeling career, Kelsey decided to pursue a career as a men's magazine model. She quickly caught the attention of several men's magazines. Kelsey saw this as the beginning of a great career and a ticket to the life she had always dreamed of. Kelsey has received several modeling offers and opportunities over the years, including photo shoots for popular publications such as Playboy and Maxim, as well as a photo shoot with 110 magazine. She frequently travels to major cities such as Los Angeles and Las Vegas to pursue these opportunities. In an interview, Kelsey describes herself as a curvaceous blonde with a slim waist and reflects her carefree personality, saying that she likes to have fun, party with her friends, and live life to the fullest. Kelsey is not overly concerned about the future. She frequently changes partners and quickly spends any money she earns or receives from fans. At 23, Kelsey became pregnant again and gave birth to a son, Josh. The father of the child did not want to marry her or acknowledge his child. As the modeling offers dried up, Kelsey turned to social media to build an audience. She actively manages her accounts, posting revealing photos in swimsuits, lingerie, or only partially covering her private parts. Kelsey has cultivated the perfect online image. Her carefully edited photos make her look beautiful, and her social media pages showcase her visits to high-end fashion stores, trendy nightclubs, and other locations. However, this ideal online image hid the true struggles of a single mother of two. Despite her wealthy appearance, her real life was difficult, as she was a poor money manager, often spending all her income at once. Around 2016, Kelsey faced serious problems after an unfortunate incident with her daughter. The girl suffered a severe trauma that left her daughter withdrawn and unable to speak. An acquaintance advised her to take her daughter to a psychiatrist. So she contacted renowned pediatric psychiatrist Dr. Thomas Burchard, who practiced in Monterey, California, to treat her daughter. Dr. Thomas Burchard is a highly respected pediatric psychiatrist who was born on February 16, 1948, in Boston, Massachusetts. He is the son of a prominent architect and engineer, and his family later moved to Virginia. Although his father taught architecture at prestigious institutions, including Harvard, Thomas chose a different path and pursued a medical career, focusing on child psychology. After completing medical school, Dr. Thomas served as a resident in pediatric psychiatry at several leading hospitals and taught at universities across the country. He eventually settled at a public clinical hospital on California's Monterey Peninsula, where he spent more than 40 years as a pediatric psychiatrist, building an impeccable reputation for his exceptional ability to connect with young patients and handle even the most complex and severe cases. He earned his doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley. Thomas was known for being kind, sharp, and incredibly generous. His compassionate nature motivated him to help those in need, especially young patients whose parents could not afford therapy. He also paid for hospital treatment for sick children from low-income families and supported single mothers. Dr. Thomas had a longtime companion named Di, who served as an assistant, housekeeper, and possibly more. As someone who knew him well, she was the first to notice changes in his behavior that showed early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. As Dr. Thomas entered his 70s, he became increasingly forgetful, absent-minded, and distracted. To hide these symptoms from his colleagues, he kept detailed diaries and notebooks to record important information, such as names, dates, and events. He always carried a notebook in his breast pocket that contained sensitive information such as bank information, account numbers, passwords, and card pins. When Kelsey first visited Dr. Thomas with her daughter, she expressed her difficulties as a single mother and her inability to afford his services. However, the doctor offered to provide his services for free and went on to give Kelsey $300 to help support her children. Kelsey was shocked but quickly discovered that by sharing tearful stories of her difficult life, she could extort more money from the elderly doctor. Kelsey prepared a detailed plan for her next appointment with Dr. Thomas. During the visit, she told a heartbreaking story about her youngest son's illness and lack of money to buy expensive medicine for him. She gave a specific amount of money that she needed, and surprisingly, she received the entire amount from Dr. Thomas. Kelsey continued to make up false, tearful stories in the following visits. She would make up stories of hardship and receive larger and larger amounts of money from this trustworthy doctor. Of course, she did not use the money for her children but for her own entertainment, designer clothes. Not wanting to return to her hometown of Virginia, Kelsey asked Thomas to pay for her rent in California, saying that she could find work there more easily and that the climate there was better for her children. Thomas agreed and paid for the apartment she had chosen. Some people suspected that the doctor had an affair with Kelsey, a young blonde model, and that was why he always indulged her requests. However, Kelsey claimed that Thomas treated her and her children like family and acted out of kindness, not love. Thomas provided Kelsey and her children with a home, paid their bills, and gave them a large sum of money for their necessities. He also leased her a luxury Mercedes-Benz convertible. Over time, Kelsey realized that her modeling career was over and her youth was slipping away. Despite this, she made no effort to find another job and instead relied on Dr. Thomas for financial support. During this time, he spent about $500,000 on Kelsey and her children. However, she squandered that money on personal indulgences, such as breast augmentation and liposuction, in hopes of reviving her modeling career. Kelsey's excessive spending and partying lifestyle led to her neglecting her children. This eventually led to her ex-husband, who had won sole custody of their daughter through the courts, stripping Kelsey of her parental rights. As a result, Kelsey was left with only her youngest son. Thomas was furious when he discovered the situation, but his anger was directed at Kelsey, not at her ex-husband. It was clear that Kelsey had neglected her children and was using the money meant for their care to support her lavish lifestyle. Dr. Thomas decided to address the issue with Kelsey, informing her that he would no longer support her lavish and idle lifestyle. However, Kelsey responded by threatening to spread false rumors that Dr. Thomas had inappropriate feelings for his young patients. Although he knew this was a lie, Dr. Thomas realized that any further rumors about the matter could seriously damage his reputation as a respected pediatric psychiatrist and scholar. Faced with this threat, Dr. Burchard reluctantly gave in to Kelsey's demands and continued to support her financially. In 2019, Kelsey moved to Las Vegas with her son to try to revive her modeling career, and she expected Thomas, whom she was blackmailing, to fund the effort. As instructed, Thomas rented a house for her and provided the requested funds. However, after receiving the financial support, Kelsey disappeared for 2 months and her whereabouts were unknown. Later that year, in February, Kelsey reappeared, contacting Thomas in an emotional state, saying that she was seriously ill, unable to work, and in dire financial straits. When Thomas refused to help, Kelsey's attitude changed completely and she continued to threaten and blackmail him. Judy, who was close to Thomas, advised him to report Kelsey's behavior to the police and contact Child Protective Services, due to concerns about Kelsey's ability to care for her younger son, especially since she had previously lost parental rights to her older daughter. Dr. Thomas took steps to prepare in case the conflict with Kelsey escalated in court. He informed his colleagues of the situation, and they agreed to support him. Judy had previously attempted to resolve the issue by speaking directly with Kelsey. Unfortunately, her efforts only resulted in Kelsey threatening retaliation. Thomas decided to travel to Las Vegas to verify Kelsey's claims. Judy tried to dissuade Thomas, but he was adamant about traveling to Las Vegas to meet with Kelsey. Judy also offered to accompany him as a friend for support, but Dr. Thomas insisted on handling the matter himself. He finally set off on March 1, 2019. On the morning of March 7, a group of tourists got lost while traveling through Nevada. While trying to get to Lake Mead, they took a dirt road off the main highway. They came across a Mercedes-Benz convertible parked in the desert. The roof was closed and the windows were rolled up, but unusually, there was no one around the car. Intrigued, the tourists cautiously approached the car and saw that one of the windows was broken. Upon further investigation, they looked inside and saw signs of a struggle. There were blood stains all over the interior. The tourists quickly contacted the police to report their shocking discovery. Police arrived at the scene around noon and discovered an unbearable stench. The source of the smell was quickly identified when police opened the trunk. Inside, they found the body of an elderly man hidden under a pile of furniture and rags. Beside him was a blood-stained baseball bat. The victim was later identified as Dr. Thomas, who had been missing for 5 days. Judy reported Dr. Thomas missing on March 2 when she was unable to reach him at their scheduled meeting time. She immediately suspected something terrible had happened and contacted the police, hoping he would be found alive. The autopsy revealed numerous serious injuries to Thomas's body. These included scratches, bruises, and superficial cuts, as well as a severe head injury that may have been caused by a baseball bat found in the trunk of the car next to him. Part of his ear was severed, and his hands had multiple cuts that suggested a desperate attempt to defend himself. Thomas's face also had noticeable bruises with a unique printed pattern. Most shocking was the evidence that the man had been placed in the trunk of the car while still alive and injured, eventually suffocating from the intense desert heat. The investigation focused on Kelsey Turner as the prime suspect, as the car at the crime scene had been rented under her name. Judy had provided the police with Kelsey's address, which matched the location Dr. Thomas had visited. However, when the police arrived at the scene, they found the house empty. Although no one was there, the house showed signs of a hasty cleanup. Containers of cleaning products were scattered throughout the house and the air smelled strongly of household chemicals, suggesting that someone had tried to erase any evidence of the crime. The house was occupied by Kelsey, her 4-year-old son, and her new boyfriend, John Logan Kennison, along with 2 neighbors, Diana Pina and Jeremy Eric. All had fled, making them suspects, as Kelsey could not have inflicted such injuries on the doctor or placed his body in the trunk of her car herself. Jeremy Eric was the only person the police interviewed. He explained that he and his girlfriend had left Kelsey's house while the doctor was still alive. According to Jeremy, his girlfriend had been drinking heavily and began flirting with Thomas, trying to extort money from him, similar to Kelsey's tactics. This made Kelsey extremely angry, as she accused Jeremy's girlfriend of trying to steal Thomas from her. The situation became worse, and Jeremy had to quickly move his girlfriend out of the house to avoid a fight. He did not return for several days and was unaware of what had happened after he left. During the investigation, the police learned from Judy that Dr. Thomas kept a notebook with his bank account information and passwords, which he frequently lost. When they searched, they discovered that the notebook was missing. Furthermore, 2 of Dr. Thomas's accounts showed significant withdrawals on March 3, after which Thomas's accounts and cards were immediately closed. On March 21, in Stockton, California, police arrested Kelsey and her boyfriend for attempting to withdraw money again. It was later discovered that the couple had stayed in various motels with a child, paid in cash, and moved frequently. They initially attempted to drain all of Thomas's accounts but were unsuccessful. They then attempted to withdraw more money with the intention of fleeing to Mexico but were prevented by the accounts being closed. Diana, a neighbor who was at Kelsey's home that night, cooperated with police and shared her account of what happened on the night of March 7th. According to her, the trouble began after Jeremy and his girlfriend left. Kelsey had a heated argument with Dr. Thomas, who refused to give her money. Kelsey threatened to ruin the doctor's reputation by spreading rumors about his misconduct with young patients. As the argument escalated, Kelsey became aggressive. Dr. Thomas, feeling threatened, locked himself in his room. However, John broke the door open with a strong shoulder thrust and then hit Thomas hard with a baseball bat. This caused a serious injury, resulting in a large hematoma and a nosebleed. Diana rushed in, pleading with everyone to calm down. Seeing Thomas's condition, she urged them to take him to the hospital, fearing the consequences of their actions. After hearing Thomas say that he would tell the police that he had been attacked and robbed by strangers, the four drove to the garage. Diana was ordered by Kelsey to return to the house and clean up, removing all traces of blood. Diana followed the instructions and began cleaning, but soon heard screams and a struggle coming from the garage. She rushed back to find the couple brutally attacking Dr. Thomas in the car. The doctor was trapped and unable to escape or defend himself. It became clear that Kelsey and John had no intention of taking Thomas to the hospital. Instead, they planned to kill him with a baseball bat, a small knife, and John's empty pistol, leaving bruises on the doctor's face. Diana was instructed to return to the house and continue cleaning. Fearing for her safety, she complied and left the garage. While Diana was still cleaning, she heard the couple's car drive away. Several hours later, John's car returned with Kelsey, but the other car, a convertible, was nowhere to be seen. Diana remained unaware of the convertible's location until she heard about a car found in the desert with a body in the trunk. Diana chose to cooperate with the police from the start by agreeing to a plea deal and sharing all relevant information she knew. This decision resulted in a reduced sentence for tampering with evidence, serving just 3 years in prison. John Logan Kennison was convicted of murder and sentenced to 45 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 years. Kelsey Turner's trial was more complicated. After her arrest, she announced that she was pregnant, causing significant delays in the trial. While in custody, she gave birth to a baby girl who, along with her son, was placed under the protection of social services, as none of Kelsey's relatives were willing to take on the responsibility. Kelsey Turner was sentenced to 25 years in prison in January 2023, with the possibility of parole after serving at least 10 years. She is currently serving her sentence at the Florence McClure Correctional Center for Women in Las Vegas. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Samadi Fonseca Fernandez. Samadi was born in Costa Rica in February 1975. Information about her family and childhood is limited. She grew up in the Cuban with her mother, Sonia Fonseca. From a young age, Samadi attended a local school and showed a complex personality. Samadi stood out for her beauty and knew how to take advantage of her appearance. However, due to her ambition and vanity, she put material and personal interests first, disappointing many people. She was also very jealous and aggressive when she was young. Thanks to her doll-like appearance, Samadi Fonseca worked for many years as a Barbie in a large bookstore of the Universal Company. The nickname Barbie stuck with her ever since. After graduating from high school, Samadi began a relationship with Osvaldo Fernando Belier, a successful journalist working for a local television station. Osvaldo was 16 years older than Samadi. This was Samadi's longest and most serious relationship, but Osvaldo never proposed to her. In 1996, they had a son, Christopher, and a year later, a daughter, Christina, was born. Due to scandals and jealousy, Samadhi and Osvaldo divorced in 2012. In 2013, Osvaldo died at the age of 53 without leaving a will for Samadhi. Not accepting this, Samadhi decided to take matters into her own hands. She went to Osvaldo's old house, occupied it, and changed the locks to prevent his family and heirs from entering. In addition to seizing the property, Samadhi also took some of Osvaldo's valuables. Osvaldo's family was extremely angry and immediately sued Samadhi for theft. The police forced Samadhi to leave the house, but no criminal proceedings were initiated against her. Samadhi had several relationships, most notably with Miguel Angel Perez, with whom she had a third daughter, Maria. Some sources claim that they were married but divorced after a few years. However, other sources claim that Samadhi was not married, but simply gave her youngest daughter her lover's surname without his consent. Many strange events have been discovered. Some Barbie lovers have gone missing or died under mysterious circumstances. However, this has not been noticed for a long time. For example, one of Samadhi's lovers went missing after breaking up with her. To this day, this person has not been found. Many suspect Samadhi's involvement, but there is no concrete evidence. Another case is Diaco, also Samadhi's former lover. He was murdered after breaking up with her. The case looked like a failed robbery. The perpetrator was never caught. Again, people suspected Samadhi was involved, but there was no clear evidence. The most famous victim believed to be linked to Samadhi was Gerardo Cruz. Gerardo Cruz, a Costa Rican native, was born in December 1992 in San Jose. He did not know his biological father because he left the family before he was born. Gerardo's mother, Ana Patricia, later married a man named Hermes Rodriguez. Hermes adopted Gerardo and loved him as his own son. A few years later, Gerardo had a younger sister named Milena. His childhood and youth were quite peaceful. He attended a normal school, loved motorbikes, and soon found true love with a girl named Carol. At the age of 23, Gerardo, his wife and 4-year-old daughter Genesis Cruz moved to live with his aunt and uncle in the suburbs of San Sebastian. He worked at a local bakery to support his family. Gerardo and Carol was happy and were expecting a second child. In the summer of 2015, Gerardo met Samadhi, a regular customer at the bakery. Samadhi was 40 years old but still attractive, liked to dress provocatively and flirt with men. Notably, she started having affairs with much younger men, probably because she enjoyed the attention they received. Despite the age difference of nearly 20 years, Gerardo quickly became infatuated with this beautiful woman and began dating her secretly. She often came to the bakery, almost every day, to meet her young lover, attracting the attention of other employees. Samadhi was often accompanied by his eldest daughter Christina, who was 19 at the time. Initially, Gerardo skillfully balanced his family life with his secret meetings with his mistress. Both women were unaware of each other's existence. However, Gerardo gradually became careless and began telling his friends and colleagues about Samadhi, praising her as a great mistress and giving him gifts. Rumors of Gerardo's relationship soon reached his mother, who tried to convince her son to leave his mistress. However, Gerardo and Samadhi's relationship only lasted a few months and ended in October 2015, when Samadhi discovered that Gerardo had a pregnant wife and a young daughter. Samadhi was furious and began calling and texting Gerardo's wife, Carol, insulting her and threatening to kill Gerardo if he did not stay with her. Gerardo begged his wife for forgiveness and wanted to keep the family together. He did not take Samadhi's threats seriously, thinking that she would quickly cool down and find a new boyfriend. He did not expect how vengeful Samadhi would become. Just a few days after the breakup with Samadhi, while walking on a downtown street, Gerardo discovered an older man secretly filming up a young woman's skirt. Gerardo was angry and decided to record the incident with his phone. He then approached the woman, explained the situation and advised her to call the police. Next, he chased the man for about 2 minutes, trying to capture his face. Finally, the man fled in a taxi. That evening, Gerardo posted a video of the incident on his personal website. After just one night, the video went viral online. Netizens quickly identified the elderly man in the video as Luis Solmano Delgado, a former finance ministry official. The video quickly spread across media, turning Gerardo into a national celebrity. He was repeatedly invited to interviews in newspapers, on television and on radio to recount the incident, condemn the former official's actions and affirm that he had no regrets about what he had done. Meanwhile, a team of talented lawyers hired by Luis began to legally attack Gerardo. They accused him of violating the law by distributing the video and were preparing to sue him. Gerardo was surprised and confused by the situation, not knowing why he was being tried instead of the man who had committed a depraved act with an innocent girl. On October 7th, Gerardo gave his final interview on a local radio station. He was confident in his views and did not feel nervous. The next day, Gerardo planned to meet his friend Oswald after work, but canceled, citing an emergency. It was later revealed that Gerardo had received a text message from Somadi that day. In the message, she had lured him to the park that evening with the promise of another interview. Gerardo trusted his ex-girlfriend completely and did not suspect anything. After work, he went to the meeting place, but instead of meeting the journalist, he was attacked by 2 strange men. They robbed him of his bag, beat him and stabbed him several times in the chest and stomach before running away. Before losing consciousness, Gerardo called his friend to tell him the news. The friend immediately called the police and an ambulance. Thanks to timely treatment, Gerardo was taken to the hospital. Doctors tried to save his life for 42 days. During this time, Gerardo underwent many surgeries, but ultimately did not survive. On November 19th, Gerardo passed away in the intensive care unit. Since Gerardo had just become famous before the tragedy, the news of his condition attracted national attention and was not exaggerated. Gerardo's family gave interviews, asking people to pray for his recovery. They did not understand why someone would attack Gerardo. Many people attended the funeral to express their condolences to the family. People hoped that the police would soon catch the culprit and give him a fair trial. There were initially many theories about the case. One theory was that it was a robbery-murder, because Gerardo was attacked in the park in the evening, his bag was stolen and he was stabbed with a knife. However, a few days before, Gerardo released a shocking video involving a famous former official, which could be related to the case. Therefore, the second theory was that it was a revenge murder. The media reported that Luis Solmano Delgado may have hired a hitman to kill the young man who had damaged his reputation. The case caused a heated debate in the press and people protested to demand the arrest of the culprit. The police began to investigate various theories and look for Gerardo's enemies. The investigation went dormant for months until May 2016, when a security camera video was discovered. The video showed 2 men running away from the crime scene. They immediately became prime suspects, but the police needed to identify and arrest them. The video became crucial evidence and, when released, helped move the investigation forward. The video was repeatedly shown on the news, urging viewers to look out for dangerous suspects. Police sketched the suspects and their physical features. Not long after, one suspect turned himself in and cooperated with the investigation, hoping for a reduced sentence. Thanks to his information, the investigation quickly identified other accomplices and the masterminds. All those involved were arrested, including Somadi and his daughter Cristina, the masterminds, Ronald Arce Barrientos, the taxi driver, Cesar Chavez Cerdas, who acted as an intermediary, Omar Costa, the young minor who directly participated in the attack and followed the victim. The roles and connections of the participants in the case were determined through phone calls and text messages. Samadhi was the mastermind who planned the entire incident in detail and recruited his daughter Christina to participate. They asked their friends Ronald and Caesar to find an assassin to kill Gerardo, disguising it as a robbery in the park at night. Omar also participated with the task of ensuring that the victim arrived at the right location. Samadhi chose October 7th as the date of the murder. On that day, she contacted all the participants several times, assigning roles and ensuring that everyone followed the plan. The young woman also asked them to bring her some of her ex-lover's belongings as evidence after the crime. Gerardo, after finishing his shift, went straight to the park. He thought he was going to an interview, so he tried to arrive on time. However, at the meeting place, he was attacked and stabbed multiple times. The attacker took Gerardo's handbag and jacket, then gave these to the Samadhi as evidence. The most important evidence against Samadhi were text messages detailing the murder plan and the roles of each participant. She was so confident that she did not delete these messages. The motive for this serious crime was jealousy. She did not want to share her lover with his wife and decided that if she could not have him, no one could. She carefully planned and executed the criminal conspiracy with the help of her daughter. They were immediately arrested and denied bail due to concerns that they might flee the country. The other co-defendants were also detained before trial, except for Omar, the supervisor, and the youngest participant was handed over to the Juvenile Justice Department. The investigation lasted about a year and a half. It was not until December 2017 that the trial of all those involved in the criminal conspiracy began. Samadhi has a criminal record and was once arrested for falsifying documents to receive state benefits, but was only fined. She assigned the surname of a former lover to the child without his consent. She then used the court to receive child support from this man for more than 3 years, until the fraud was discovered. Samadhi was sentenced to 3 years in prison and fined a large sum. However, because she has a young child, her sentence was reduced to 5 years of suspended imprisonment. At the trial, the victim Gerardo's wife confirmed that she knew about her husband's relationship with Samadhi. She also said that Samadhi had threatened to kill Gerardo, but he was not too worried about these threats. The main motive for the case was Samadhi's jealousy and hurt, as she could not accept that her young lover wanted to stay with his wife. Through phone records, police discovered that Samadhi and her daughter Christina had planned the crime together. After the security camera footage of the murders was released, Christina had a mental breakdown. She called her mother in tears and wanted to turn herself in, but Samadhi reassured her that the investigation would never lead to them. The verdict was announced on January 23, 2018. The court sentenced Samadhi to 30 years in prison, Christina to 25 years, Ronald to 25 years, and Caesar to 25 years. Of the killers, one was sent to a juvenile detention center, while another was still at large at the time. Omar, who had been stalking the victim, was acquitted. The victim's family received $140,000 in moral compensation. After the trial, they expressed their gratitude to the court for giving Gerardo's killers a fair sentence. Samadhi and Christina's lawyers appealed to the Court of Appeals for a reduced sentence. The appeal hearing took place in November 2019. At the same time, Ronald. According to the testimony, Ronald participated in the massacre but did not know the details of the plan. Ronald and Caesar also appealed in hopes of having their sentences reduced. As a result, each participant in the crime had their sentence reduced by 5 years. Samadhi is currently serving a 25-year sentence in a women's prison in Costa Rica. In the summer of 2020, she registered her marriage to a woman named Lindsay Diaz Lopez, whom she met in prison. At the time of the registration, Lindsay had been pardoned and released from prison, while Samadhi still had to continue serving nearly 2 more decades of her sentence. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Vicky Glass. Vicky Glass was born on September 21, 1979 in Stockton-on-Tees, a small town in the northeast of England, on the banks of the River Tees. She has an older sister named Claire, who is 1 year older. When Vicky was 6 years old, her parents, Deborah and Anthony, decided to divorce. Her mother, Deborah, later married another man named Colin Goodall, and Vicky had a half-sister named Cheryl and a brother named Thomas. Although her parents divorced, they continued to live in Stockton. Vicky developed a passion for music from an early age, becoming a big fan of Michael Jackson and the musical Cats. Between the ages of 13 and 18, she joined a local jazz band and often performed with her friends. After graduating from Blackstone High School, Vicky continued her studies at the academy and earned 5 college degrees. However, her life changed dramatically. At 18, Vicky fell in with a bad group of friends and began her drug addiction. Her illegal activities were mainly in the Cannon Park and Gresham areas of Middleborough, near her home. Her illegal activities were mainly in the Cannon Park and Gresham areas of Middleborough, near her hometown. In 1999, Vicky became homeless and contracted severe pneumonia. During this difficult time, her friend introduced her to a man named Patch Claus. This man provided her with a temporary place to heal. For months, Vicky lived with Patch, who cared for her and provided her with medication. However, this support was not enough to help Vicky escape her addiction and unhealthy lifestyle. On September 23, 2000, a few days after her 21st birthday, Vicky left Patch's house with her friend for the last time. She had initially stayed at Cannon Park in Gresham. Vicky also worked as an escort on Set Road in Middleborough, and they drove to Main Road. Main Road was notorious for escorting and illegal activities. After staying there for a while, Vicky and her client left and hailed a ring taxi. The taxi driver then took them to a man's house in Norton, only 3 blocks away from where they had left. Vicky stayed there once more before hailing another taxi to return to Middleborough. The taxi that picked her up was a white Vauxhall Vectra, registration number 790, at 4 a.m. on Sunday, September 24th. She got out at the intersection of Union Road and Ashwood Square, near a pub called The Colleague. From there, Vicky was only a 5-minute walk to Patch's residence, where she lived with the man. However, she did not return home. Patch became concerned when Vicky did not return and began calling, visiting friends and going to places she frequented, but there was no news of her. After 3 days, he contacted the police, and on September 27th, an investigation into Vicky's disappearance was launched. A week after Vicky went missing, on October 5th, the local paper, the Northern Echo, published an article headlined, "Missing Young Woman." In the article, Vicky was described as being about 5 feet 1 inch tall, with blonde hair tied in a ponytail. She was wearing a white t-shirt, light gray trousers and white trainers. The article also quoted a police officer as saying that Vicky was a known prostitute and frequented hot spots. Vicky's family refused to give up and were determined to find out who was behind the incident. In 2018, the police received additional funding to try to find a criminal. On Friday, November 3rd, a man was walking his dog in the village of Demi, 20 miles southwest of Middleborough. At 6 a.m., he walked past a ditch near the main road in the village and discovered the decomposing, unclothed body parts of a woman. He quickly called the police, who arrived and identified the victim as Vicky Glass, a 21-year-old woman who had gone missing. The cause of her death has not yet been determined. North Yorkshire and Cleveland police immediately began an investigation. A team of 40 police officers were sent to the scene to collect evidence and conduct forensic examinations. However, no traces were found at the scene, and the clothes Vicky was wearing when she went missing were not found. Detective Brian Dan, who is leading the investigation, has appealed to journalists to contact anyone who knew Vicky, spoke to her, and has any information that could help the investigation. As Demi was a popular tourist destination, police appealed to anyone who might have been in the area to contact them. Police noted that the car that brought Vicky to the village may have stopped on the roadside outside the village before entering the village and asked people to be aware of this stop. On November 13, 2000, Vicky's mother Deborah addressed the press appealing for witnesses to her daughter's disappearance. Police placed a picture of Vicky in the pub where she was last reported missing, as well as in other areas of the city where sex workers were known to operate. By November 20th, police had interviewed nearly 500 people and received more than 150 statements. Those interviewed included former clients of Vicky and drivers who used the Cannon Park overnight car park where Vicky and other sex workers often worked. The police laid flowers on her grave where her body was found. They then appealed to the public for any information that might help them find the culprit. Two men in Vicky's family tried to stay calm, appealing for the public's cooperation in the investigation. Meanwhile, Vicky's mother, Deborah, was extremely distraught and could not attend the ceremony. After questioning many people, the police found important information. They said that about 12 prostitutes may have information related to Vicky's disappearance. The police began a more thorough investigation. In March, the police began to closely monitor lorry drivers stopping at Cannon Park car park. Next, the police arrested a 39-year-old man from Grimsby, but he was released on bail and his identity is still kept secret from the public. On January 9, 2002, police arrested a 47-year-old man on suspicion of being involved in Vicky's case. 2 days after his arrest, on January 11th, the man's name was given as Eric Coates. He was a resident of South North Yorkshire and lived about 45 miles south of Middlesbrough. Eric regularly used the services of prostitutes and was a client of Vicky. This was the third time Eric had been questioned about Vicky's disappearance. Police searched his home, where he lived with his parents. Police said Eric could not provide an alibi for his whereabouts on the day Vicky went missing, although he did mention that he may have been at his home because it was his father's birthday that evening. Eric Coates later gave an interview to the Northern Echo, saying that, according to rumors, Vicky had been murdered over a drug debt and that he did not want anyone else to die like that. He also expressed hope that a criminal would be found. Police found no clear evidence and Eric was released without charge. In July 2002, Cleveland police announced their intention to question another suspect, John Taylor. John had been sentenced to life in prison for the kidnap and murder of 16-year-old Leanne Turner in Leeds, West Yorkshire. He kidnapped Leanne Turner while she was shopping in the city centre on Christmas Eve 2000, took her home and brutally murdered her. Leanne's body was found 9 months later by Cleveland Police Inspector Jim Tate. Policeman Jim Tate told the press about the progress of the investigation, but no further information about John Taylor was available in connection with Vicky's case. To mark the second anniversary of Vicky's death, in September 2002, her mother, Deborah, held a press conference appealing for help from the media. In her heartbreaking speech, she shared the pain she had suffered since losing her child and how she had considered suicide because she could not bear the pain. After a long delay, a further investigation into Vicky's case was launched. However, when this investigation was carried out in August 2003, the results of Vicky's autopsy could not determine the cause of death. This was because Vicky's body had decomposed so badly over time that many of her body parts, including major organs and some bones, were missing. The subsequent investigation also found no signs of injury or abuse to Vicky. Later that year, Vicky's mother, Deborah, and stepfather Colin visited the site in Denny where Vicky's body was found to pay their respects. They were followed by reporters from ITV. In a 20-second video, Deborah can be seen fighting back tears as she says Vicky did not deserve to die like that. Gordon Lamp from Cleveland Police also said that despite 10 years having passed, they would continue to try to find the criminal responsible for Vicky's death. 10 years after Vicky's death on September 24, 2010, her parents spoke to reporters for information and discussed the emotional pain caused by the decade-long hunt for her killer. Her mother, Deborah, said she thinks about Vicky every day and cannot get over her loss. Vicky's mother, Deborah, died in 2015 at the age of 55 and will never know who was responsible for her daughter's death. In 2017, Cleveland police, along with Crime Commissioner Barry Coppinger, applied for special funding from the Home Office to fund the investigation of 3 old criminal cases, including Vicky Glass's case. The story of Vicky Glass, it all started with her disappearance, but the reason why she was killed is still a big question. Currently, the mystery of Vicky's death is still unsolved, and this causes unbearable pain to her family and friends. People continue to search for answers and hope to catch the culprit responsible for Vicky's tragic death, but unfortunately, after all these years, the culprit is still not found. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Tara Lynn Grant. Tara Lynn Grant was born on June 22, 1972 in Michigan. She grew up on a farm with her parents and older sister. During her childhood, Tara enjoyed doing outdoor activities such as horseback riding and helping her family take care of farm animals. She was also very active in school sports, cheerleading, playing basketball and playing music in the school band. After completing high school, Tara decided to attend the University of Michigan. It was here that she met her boyfriend Stephen and married him after graduating. Tara, after graduating, got a good job at a large international company. Meanwhile, Stephen had been involved in politics as an assistant to a state senator. However, when the senator retired, Stephen lost his job. Therefore, he decided to work at his father's small tool shop. After 4 years of marriage, Tara and Stephen had a daughter, followed by a son a few years later. When their second child was born, they bought a new home in Monmouth County, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. Tara was successful in her career, but due to the nature of her work, she often traveled to different states and countries, leaving her with only weekends to spend with her family. As a result, Stephen had to take on most of the responsibility for the children. His father's store job and the children's care were difficult for him. So they decided to hire a full-time nanny to help ease the burden. After a short time, they found the right person. They hired a young German woman who quickly bonded with their children and took on most of the childcare. Because of her work, Tara only came home on weekends, which led to more frequent arguments between them. Tara expected that after her next promotion, she would be able to adjust her schedule to spend more time at home with her family, but when she was promoted, she traveled for work almost every day. This continued until February 14, 2007, when something unexpected happened. On Valentine's Day, Stephen reported to the police that Tara had been out of contact for 5 days. This was unusual because Tara was in constant contact with her family, especially when children were involved. Stephen recounted the incident as follows. On the evening of February 9th, Tara returned home from a business trip and said she had to leave earlier than expected, staying home for only 1 day. This led to an argument, and Tara began packing her things. As she left the house, she told the driver of a dark-colored car, "I'll be waiting down the street." From then on, Tara was out of contact and did not return any calls. The police wondered why Stephen waited 5 days to report the incident. Stephen explained that he was not worried at first because he thought Tara had just left for work early as planned and had not contacted her because they had just had an argument. However, he became concerned when Tara did not contact her family for an extended period of time. Normally, when she was on a business trip, she would call her 2 young children, but this time she did not contact them. Furthermore, Tara's boss called Stephen on Monday to say that she had not shown up for a meeting. This made him even more worried, and he was sure that Tara was missing. Stephen called Tara's parents and told them about her lack of contact with home. However, the parents thought that Tara just needed time off after an argument with Stephen. Previously, Tara had told her parents that her relationship with Stephen was having difficulties due to work, and they argued frequently. Therefore, her relatives thought that Tara just wanted to temporarily leave and would return home when she had stabilized. As time passed and Tara still did not appear, and she did not answer any calls, Stephen began to worry about her safety. He decided to contact the police for help. During the interrogation, the police noticed some suspicious scratches on Stephen. They asked if the scratches were related to the argument with Tara. But Stephen denied it. He explained that he often got injured while working at his father's store. After the interview, the police said they needed to search Stephen's home, and he agreed. When they arrived, the police discovered that all of Tara's belongings were missing from the home, including her papers and wallet, along with her suitcase. Stephen also gave them access to Tara's personal computer. The police checked it and found that there had been no bank transactions in the days after she disappeared. The police were surprised because Tara would have needed to pay for expenses if she had gone somewhere, such as buying a plane ticket or booking a hotel room. During the search of the home, the police found no signs of Tara's whereabouts after she disappeared. There was no evidence or clues. Therefore, the police decided to focus on determining what she had been doing and where she had been on February 9th. The area they live in is considered one of the safest in the country, and the local police department has little experience investigating similar disappearances. The police ask Stephen to take a lie detector test, but he refuses. Stephen insists that he would never harm his wife and becomes very emotional. The police then leave his home and consider their next steps. However, the next morning, Stephen contacts the police again and says he is willing to cooperate. However, a short time later, Stephen's lawyer contacts the police and says he has advised his agent not to cooperate with the police. Other than following the usual practice in such cases, they are unable to find any other leads. During the investigation, Tara's family, friends, and colleagues said they had not heard from her since February 9th and did not know where she might be. Additionally, her bank account had not recorded any significant transactions, although she needed to make some basic purchases. Police began to question Stephen and discovered that his driver's license had been revoked. However, Stephen continued to drive despite the ban. Police used this to arrest Stephen for driving without a license. After his arrest, Stephen claimed that the police were considering him a prime suspect in his wife's disappearance and refused to answer any questions. With the assistance of his lawyer, Stephen was released on bail and returned home. Police continued to investigate and requested Tara's cell phone records to gather more evidence. On the day Tara went missing, she made one last call. It was from the airport, in which she told Stephen that she would be home soon. Stephen then called her repeatedly, but all the calls went to voicemail. The police listened to these recordings and found that Stephen asked Tara to answer or call back. He claimed that Tara did not care about the children and asked her to come home for the children. However, Tara's cell phone was turned off and was last connected to a cell tower near her home on the evening of her disappearance. It is worth noting that the police did not find any incoming calls to Tara at that time, although Stephen said that someone had called her before she left the house and said that the person would be waiting for her on the street. Stephen was really worried about his wife and at the same time angry at Tara's actions of abandoning their children. Although the police were investigating him, they could not find any new traces. Stephen still refused to cooperate with the police, accusing them of wasting time suspecting him instead of looking for Tara. During this time, Stephen actively appeared in the media. Tara's mysterious disappearance attracted a lot of attention from many people, and in front of the camera, Stephen begged her to return home safely. When the company that Stephen and Tara hired the nanny learned about the case, they decided to send the nanny back to Germany. Before leaving, the nanny reported to the police about her working hours at their house. The nanny said that on the evening Tara came home, she went to a bar with her friends. When the nanny returned home, she met Stephen, who seemed sad and said that Tara had just left home. Although Stephen refused to cooperate with the police, he hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent, to investigate the case. However, this investigator also failed to find Tara. The police decided to change their approach and contacted the nanny agency that employed Tara and Stephen. They discovered an important piece of information. Before hiring the German nanny, they had a total of 6 other nannies, but none of them had worked there long term. Police interviewed the nannies, most of whom said Stephen behaved strangely and unnervingly. They said he would rummage through their belongings, ask personal questions, and verbally abuse them. The police began investigating why the last nanny from Germany had a completely different description of her time with the family. They had only heard good things about Stephen. To clarify the matter, the police monitored the nanny's emails and phone calls. This led to an unexpected piece of information. The police discovered text messages between her and Stephen, which showed that they had been in a relationship. It was learned that the 19-year-old had been having an affair with him during Tara's business trips and that the relationship continued until she quit her job and had to leave the country. Although this was an important clue, the police could not yet conclude that Stephen was involved in Tara's disappearance. Therefore, they continued to look for other evidence. During the investigation, the police talked to Tara's relatives and friends and found that most of them did not like Stephen because of his strange behavior. They believed that Stephen wanted to control Tara's every move and often caused conflicts with her family. The police also found another important piece of information. Stephen's ex-girlfriend, whom he had dated before meeting Tara, contacted the police and revealed something surprising. According to her, Stephen contacted her again a few months ago, and their conversations gradually became intimate. Eventually, Stephen expressed his desire to start a romantic relationship with her, even though they were both married to other people. Stephen also complained about Tara and her frequent absences. He suspected that she was cheating on him with her boss. To verify this, he installed tracking software on her computer, allowing him to read her messages, but he found no evidence of Tara's infidelity. This information made the police even more suspicious of her husband's involvement in Tara's disappearance. However, the police still needed more evidence. Since it had been several weeks since Tara went missing, they began to consider the possibility that she was no longer alive and began an extensive search for her body. Police, along with volunteers, began searching the area around Tara's house and a large park nearby for several miles. However, the search lasted for several days and still yielded no results. But everything changed on February 28th. A woman walking in the park discovered something strange under a tree along the path. A plastic bag was covered with branches and snow, but it was clear that there was still something inside. Therefore, she decided to examine the bag closely. When she looked into the bag, she discovered rubber gloves and metal fragments along with a dark red substance at the bottom of the bag. She called the police to report the incident, and she decided to keep the bag and turn it in to the police. Police suspected the dark red substance could be blood, so they sent the bag to a lab for testing. However, due to the large workload, experts said the DNA analysis could take up to 2 months. In the meantime, experts have tested the bag and confirmed that the dark red substance is indeed human blood. The police focused all their efforts on the area where the bag was found, mobilizing all resources to investigate. Meanwhile, Stephen did not participate in the search. Instead, Stephen spent his time giving an interview to a news channel, giving many suspicious answers. Stephen repeatedly criticized Tara for being away from home so often. He called her a bad mother and claimed that he shouldered most of the responsibility for taking care of the children. When the reporter asked about their financial situation and whether he was living off Tara's money, Stephen became angry. He insisted that he did not need a single penny from Tara. During the interview, Stephen accused Tara of having an affair but did not provide any evidence. He repeatedly criticized Tara. The police obtained a search warrant for Tara and Stephen's home. The police arrived at Stephen's home. At the same time, Stephen returned from an interview with a reporter. The police informed him of the search warrant for his home. Stephen opened the door for them and then called his lawyer. The lawyer asked the police if Stephen was under arrest. The police replied that he was not. Stephen then said that he was going to walk his dog and left. During that time, the police searched each room in the house. They eventually arrived at the garage and found a large green bin containing several plastic bags. When they opened one of the plastic bags, they found an unknown substance and women's clothing. When the police opened the other bag, they discovered that it contained human remains. After examining a total of 5 bags in the bin, the police quickly confirmed that they contained the remains of a woman. Police believed they had found Tara's body and suspected Stephen of being her killer. However, Stephen did not appear, so the police immediately launched a search for him to prevent him from fleeing or causing harm to others. Meanwhile, the police requested reinforcements to search the park for Tara's remains as more remains were still missing from the garage. Over 100 police officers from neighboring counties were called in to assist in the search, and their efforts soon paid off. A few hundred meters from where the bag was found, the police found another body part. Then they found the head. Due to the cold weather, the rest of the body was quite well preserved, helping the police confirm that it was Tara. The police continued to search and found some more body parts. However, in the evening, the search had to be stopped until the next morning. During this time, the police also tried to locate Stephen but were unsuccessful. They contacted his friends, and one of them revealed that Stephen had called him, informing him that the police were searching at Stephen's house and asking to pick him up on the way. Stephen's friend came to pick him up and took him home. On the way, he noticed that Stephen's behavior was very strange. He seemed scared, his hands were shaking, and he seemed very depressed. When Stephen arrived at his friend's house, Stephen said he wanted to see his children and borrowed a car from his friend. However, Stephen's children were at his sister's house in another state at the time. The friend agreed to lend him the pickup truck, and Stephen left. In order to track Stephen, the police requested his phone and credit card information. This helped them quickly determine Stephen's travel route. By monitoring his withdrawals and calls to his sister, the police realized that Stephen was on his way to see his children. Realizing this, the police immediately set out to track him. An unexpected event occurred. The police received a call from a German woman with whom Stephen had a relationship. The woman said that Stephen had just contacted her and confessed to killing his wife, Tara. According to him, they had argued that night and he became violent after Tara slapped him. In a fit of rage, Stephen pushed Tara and she fell to the floor, resulting in her death from head injuries. After this confession, the police no longer had any doubts about Stephen's guilt. However, they still needed to catch him. For hours, they searched the area along the highway leading to the neighboring state. They eventually found Stephen's car near the entrance to the national park, but he himself was nowhere to be found. The police searched the area and after several hours of searching, they found Stephen using a thermal imaging camera. He was lying under a tree, wearing light clothing and in a dangerous state of hypothermia. The officers noticed that he was suffering from an unusual condition, often talking to trees and mumbling incomprehensible sentences. Fearing that he was in danger, the officers quickly airlifted him to the hospital. At that time, his body temperature was only 88 degrees Fahrenheit, but doctors were able to save him. However, he needed time to fully recover. While Stephen was in the hospital, he was charged with murder and the case was transferred to court. Interestingly, on the same day, Stephen's attorney refused to defend him. When asked why, Stephen's attorney gave a vague answer. A new attorney was then appointed for Stephen. Meanwhile, forensic pathologists began investigating Tara's remains. One of the most experienced pathologists in the country, who had worked on such high-profile cases as the JFK case and the JonBenet Ramsey case, was appointed as the chief medical examiner. After examining Tara's remains, the chief medical examiner concluded that Stephen's story did not match the facts. According to Stephen, Tara died of head trauma, but the investigation actually showed that Tara's cause of death was strangulation. When Stephen recovered, the police came to the hospital to see him and he told them what happened that night. The incident started when Tara returned and said she had to leave a day early. This led to a heated argument between the two. In a fit of rage, Stephen attacked Tara. She tried to leave, but he held her back. Tara defended herself by punching Stephen in the face, which angered him and he attacked her. The incident escalated when Stephen yelled at and strangled Tara. He then dragged her body down the second floor to the garage and put her in the trunk of his car. Meanwhile, the nanny returned home. To cover up his crime, Stephen told her that Tara had left him. The next day, he took the body to his father's workshop while making sure no one else was there. To cover his tracks, Stephen destroyed all of Tara's documents and personal belongings, then used a saw to cut her body into pieces. A few hours later, he packed the remains into plastic bags, placed them in a container, and returned home, leaving the body in his car for several days. He pondered how to dispose of the remains while creating an alibi for himself. He repeatedly called Tara and left messages on her voicemail, begging her to come home. Stephen took his son's sled and went to the park. There, he placed the container containing Tara's remains on the sled and began pulling it up a hill to avoid the crowded area. However, the rope he was pulling the sled with was not secure, and it slipped out of his hands. The sled began to roll down, the container tipped over, and the bags containing the remains spilled out. After picking up the bags, Stephen put the container back on the sled, and after a while, he found a remote place to bury the bags under the snow. He then left the park. A few days after he left, the police began looking for Tara, and the detectives announced that they would begin a search in the area of the park where Stephen had buried the bags. Stephen became panicked, remembering that the largest bag had been poorly hidden and could soon be discovered. To avoid this, he decided to move the bags to a safer place. Stephen went to the park, picked up a few bags, shouldered them, and carried them to his father's workshop, placing them on the roof. The next day, before going to the interview, he took the box from home, went to the workshop to carry the bags back to his garage. However, the next day, the police obtained a search warrant for the house. There, they found the bags in the box. When the situation became clear, Stephen confessed that he had not originally planned to surrender. During his conversation with the police, Stephen showed no remorse for his crimes. Instead, he often smiled and joked even as he described the process of hiding and disposing of the body. While Stephen awaited trial in prison, his children continued to live with his sister. This did not please Tara's family. Despite this, Stephen's sister continued to keep in touch with him, even feeling sorry for him and responding to jokes about Tara's murder. Tara's family eventually won custody of the children, but Stephen's family was still allowed to see them. In November 2007, Stephen's trial began. However, he did not deny his guilt. His new attorney then tried to get Stephen to get a reduced sentence. The attorney explained that Stephen and Tara's troubled marriage and Tara's frequent absences were the main reasons for Stephen's crime. During the trial, Stephen had lied about Tara's plans to come home a day earlier. Tara's sister, who had spoken to her before the murder, also confirmed this information. During that conversation, Tara told her sister that she would be home soon after that, as she did every week. There was no evidence that Tara had lied to her husband. Tara's boss said that Tara's relationship with the man was purely business, which was confirmed by their emails and text messages. The prosecution failed to prove that Stephen had planned the murder in advance. He had clearly committed the crime in a fit of rage, which could have resulted in a second-degree murder charge instead of a first-degree one. On December 21, 2007, the jury unanimously found Stephen guilty and he was sentenced to a minimum of 50 years in prison. Stephen's attorney attempted to appeal the verdict, but to no avail. He has since served time behind bars. But his story didn't end there. Tara's murder captured the attention of millions across the country, and Stephen clearly enjoyed it. While in prison, he began writing a book and begged to have it published with the help of his sister. They even discussed the possibility of turning it into a movie, and Stephen considered which famous actor could play him. In 2008, something else came to light. Stephen's children told their aunt that they had actually seen their father kill their mother that evening. They came out of the room after hearing screams and witnessed the whole thing. When this information appeared in the media, Stephen's relatives accused the children of lying and continued to protect him. That same year, it was revealed that Stephen's father, unlike other relatives, did not support him, could not live with what his son had done, and Stephen's father's body was found in his home. To this day, Stephen remains behind bars and will only be eligible for parole in 2058. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Kira Steger. Kira Steger was born on November 19, 1982, in Des Plaines, Illinois. She was the daughter of Marcy and Jay Kira, who described her as a bubbly, dedicated, and sweet person. Kira worked at the Mall of America, where she held positions at 2 stores, Wet Seal and, most recently, Delia's. Her co-workers were not only her best friends but also her family. She had a unique ability to see strengths in others that they had not yet seen. Kira had planned a bright and peaceful future. Unfortunately, her dreams came to an abrupt end when Kira mysteriously disappeared. On Thursday, February 21, 2013, Kira had a shift. Her co-workers said she was feeling well and had plans to go out to dinner at a fancy restaurant with her husband, Jeffrey Trevino, after work. Kira and Jeffrey met 3 years ago and quickly fell in love. Kira and Jeffrey began a romantic relationship and eventually married, forming a happy and stable couple. Although they sometimes disagreed, they resolved everything in private, without letting anyone know about these disagreements. 2 days later, on Saturday, February 23, when Kira failed to show up for work, her co-workers became concerned because this was unlike her. Kira was always punctual, strict with herself and others, never late, and always kept to a schedule. When Kira could not be reached, her co-workers called Jeffrey, but he did not know where his wife was. Jeffrey said that Kira had left home the morning before and had not returned. He was not too worried because Kira had a habit of occasionally being absent for a day or two, often staying overnight at friends' or relatives' houses without notice. However, the bad weather with heavy snow that day may have worried him. Jeffrey thought that something might have happened to her on the road. Perhaps her car broke down and her cell phone ran out of battery. That same day, not receiving any news from his wife, Jeffrey reported her missing and contacted Kira's family. Her family was shocked by the mysterious disappearance of their loved one, and this was a huge shock for them. After receiving the report of Kira Steger's disappearance, detectives immediately began investigating. Investigators began by questioning Jeffrey and searching the nearby area. Detectives went to Jeffrey's home to talk to him. Jeffrey said that on Thursday, he and Kira wanted to spend time together. They had dinner, talked, went bowling, and then left the mall. According to Jeffrey, they both went home soon after because Kira planned to watch a movie. Jeffrey also told the detectives that his wife had left the house the following morning, Friday, around 8:30. A meeting had been scheduled at work that she had to attend. Kira was acting normally, and Jeffrey did not notice anything unusual. Jeffrey did not find anything unusual about Kira's occasional disappearances, although he did not know where she went or who she was spending time with. Jeffrey said that they had been having relationship problems for the past few months. However, he did not find it serious or alarming, but rather viewed it as the usual small arguments that occur in every family. The detective asked Jeffrey about who Kira might be seeing and whether she was in any other relationship. Jeffrey dismissed this idea, as he had asked Kira directly and she had denied it. According to Jeffrey, he truly loved Kira and trusted her. Investigators turned over all the information they had gathered about Kira and her car to the patrol team. Detectives also went directly to the Mall of America to verify Jeffrey's statements and look for clues. The Mall of America, located in Bloomington, is one of the largest malls in the world, with 520 stores, an amusement park, an aquarium, a movie theater, a golf course, and many other amenities. The mall has numerous security cameras, so detectives reviewed the footage of Kira leaving the company on February 21st. The video did not show anything unusual. Jeffrey's initial statement was very credible. He met Kira after work. They stayed in the mall for a while, then went down to the parking lot and left. There was no argument, and the evening went smoothly. Waiting without knowing what had happened was difficult, and each passing day made Kira's family more and more worried about her safety. With no word from her, Kira's family traveled to Bloomington to help with the investigation. They printed flyers with Kira's picture on them, posted them on utility poles, and handed them out to passers-by. Their goal was to attract as much attention as possible to find Kira. They knew they couldn't just stand by and had to take action to find their loved one. While Kira's family was handing out flyers, the investigators continued their investigation. While interviewing neighbors, the police discovered a surveillance camera on a neighbor's home. The camera was pointed at Kira and Jeffrey's home. The investigators asked the homeowner to copy the footage from the camera because they hoped to find clues in it. Meanwhile, records from a cell phone company provided them with a new lead. According to phone records, Kira was in a relationship with someone other than Jeffrey. That person was Ryan Wendt, the manager of the chain of stores where she worked. They had a deep relationship and corresponded frequently. Police determined that Ryan had left the state and that when the search for Kira began, Ryan was driving to Colorado. This man was closely related to the investigation because, in addition to his relationship with Kira, he was out of state at the time of her disappearance. It could be a coincidence, or there could be something else going on behind his departure. Investigators needed answers. After several attempts, detectives were able to contact Ryan. He said the last time he had contact with Kira was when he was driving through South Dakota and texting her. These messages were sent shortly before Kira went missing. After reviewing the timestamps, detectives determined that Kira had contacted her new lover while she was having dinner with her husband. The messages showed that Kira had become increasingly distant from Jeffrey. Investigators ran a cell tower location check on Ryan's phone and checked his credit card statements. The results showed that he was indeed out of state that night and had no connection to Kira's disappearance. As a result, Ryan was released and cleared as a suspect. The timestamps on the messages showed that Kira was still texting Ryan even after she returned home to her husband. However, after 11:44 p.m., their conversation stopped, and Kira's phone was no longer active. Meanwhile, another investigation team was preparing to review video from a surveillance camera installed at Kira's neighbor's home. The camera captured most of the street scene from left to right. However, it rotated so quickly that it was difficult to observe. If the camera saw something suspicious, it immediately moved in another direction. Jeffrey and Kira's house was only visible for a few seconds when the camera panned to the right. Jeffrey said that after dinner and bowling, he and Kira went home, watched a movie, and went to bed. However, when investigators reviewed the footage, they discovered that just after 2 a.m., Kira's car backed into the driveway. Because the footage was poor and the camera kept moving, it was difficult to determine exactly what was happening at that time. The car then left the house. Jeffrey explained that Kira had asked him to fill up her car with gas for work the next day, so he went to the gas station. Surprisingly, this story was true. He was seen at the gas station around 3:30 a.m. However, detectives discovered that after leaving the gas station, he headed toward the highway instead of home. It is unclear where Jeffrey went next. The neighbor's camera did not record him returning, but this may have been a coincidence since the camera was always moving. Therefore, in theory, Jeffrey could have gotten home later since the camera was capturing a different angle. When investigators reviewed the video, they saw Kira's Chevrolet leave at 9:21 a.m. Unfortunately, they couldn't determine who was driving. A missing person report was filed on Saturday, February 23rd, and on Monday, February 25th, police received a call about a suspicious car parked near the shopping center where Kira worked. There are 2 multi-story parking lots there. A security guard found the car parked for several days and asked for it to be towed. When the driver inspected the car before towing it, he noticed suspicious red stains on the trunk lid and immediately called the police. That car turned out to be Kira's white car. Although there wasn't much blood, just a few small stains, it was still very concerning. In the car, they found Kira's wallet and a divorce form downloaded from the internet. Additionally, a dark object in the snow behind the car caught the attention of the investigators. As they approached, they found a rolled-up trunk mat with dark stains. DNA testing confirmed that it was Kira Steger's blood. The investigators were devastated to realize that Kira was most likely dead. This heartbreaking news was a huge shock to her family and friends. Their last hope of seeing Kira again was dashed, leaving them with questions. How did she die? Was she in pain? Who could hate her enough to take her life? The fact that Kira's body had not been found added to the confusion, as the endless grief seemed unlikely to be alleviated. The detectives made it a top priority to find out who had left the car in the parking lot. The car left the house at 9:21 a.m., and about 20 minutes later, it was caught on a mall camera. There were no cameras in the parking lot where the car was found, but another camera recorded the road leading to the lot, which was located near where Kira's car was parked. After reviewing the camera footage, detectives found that a hooded man appeared a few minutes after Kira's white Chevrolet pulled into the lot. It was cold enough that it was not unusual for him to be wearing a hoodie, but detectives wanted to learn more about where he went. The hooded man was seen walking across the street and approaching a taxi stand. He briefly chatted with a driver, then got into a cab and drove away. Police were able to determine the company that owned the taxis in the mall parking lot. Based on the time he spent talking to the drivers, police were able to determine the license plate numbers. All of the taxis had GPS tracking devices, which showed that the man ended up about a block away from Kira and Jeffrey's house and left after paying in cash. As the taxi left the neighborhood, it was caught on camera, the same camera that had filmed part of Kira and Jeffrey's house. 2 minutes later, a man in a hoodie entered the frame. The low resolution of the video made it difficult to identify his face, but the white logo on his shirt was clearly visible. As investigators continued to examine the video, they saw the man enter Kira and Jeffrey's house. Kira was missing, leading to suspicions that the hooded man might be Jeffrey. After obtaining a search warrant, the police went to the house. At first, the house looked normal and unremarkable. However, upon closer inspection, Forensic experts discovered dark red stains in Kira and Jeffrey's bedroom. There were several on the wall near the bed and about 100 on the mattress. It was clear that the bedroom had been rearranged and cleaned recently. When the forensic team sprayed luminol, the carpeting glowed. There were bloodstains throughout the house that were not visible to the naked eye. The bloodstains originated in the bedroom and extended to other areas of the house. Forensic testing confirmed that the blood belonged to Kira, leading investigators to believe that she was no longer alive. In addition to searching the house, police also searched Jeffrey's car. There were no bloodstains or signs of a struggle. However, they found one interesting detail: a gas station receipt in Jeffrey's car, dated 1 hour and 40 minutes before Kira's car was abandoned in the mall parking lot. According to the receipt, the transaction was made using Jeffrey's card. Detectives went to the gas station to review the security cameras. The camera recorded Jeffrey filling up with gas, then going inside to withdraw money from an ATM. The video clearly showed Jeffrey's face and a logo on his jacket that looked similar to the logo on the man in the earlier footage. With video evidence and all the evidence in the house, Jeffrey Trevino, 39, was arrested. He was taken to the police station for questioning and is now the prime suspect. Immediately after being released from the interrogation room, Jeffrey contacted a lawyer and was advised to exercise his right to remain silent. The police had enough evidence to charge him, but the most compelling evidence was Kira's body. No one suspected Kira was dead at the time. Police, Kira's family, and volunteers searched for her for months. In late March, as the snow melted, a volunteer found a strange bag on the edge of Keller Lake a few miles from Jeffrey's house and called the police. The bag contained a bloody pillow, a shirt, and a bra. The forensic team linked these items to Kira because her DNA was found on them. The lake remained frozen, hampering the search. However, when divers surveyed the water, they found no remains. The area around the lake was searched several times with 4 cadaver dogs, trained to find dead bodies, but to no avail. 2.5 months after Kira's disappearance, on May 8, 2013, the St. Paul Police Department received a disturbing call. The caller reported that he had seen what appeared to be a body in the Mississippi River. Police discovered and recovered a body. The body was naked. Dental records identified it as Kira Steger. She had suffered severe trauma to the forehead and a broken left index finger. Because the body was so badly decomposed, the medical examiner was unable to determine the exact cause of death. Using new evidence, investigators attempted to reconstruct a timeline of the events leading up to Kira's death and the events that followed. They believed that when Kira and Jeffrey returned home, Jeffrey found her texting with someone else. When Kira refused to show her husband the messages, he snatched the phone from her and broke her fingers. After reading the romantic messages, Jeffrey became even angrier, and in a fit of rage, he killed Kira and tried to cover up the crime. He drove Kira's car to the house, put the body in the trunk, then went to the gas station before taking the body to the riverbank and dumping it. He then returned home, discarding the bag containing Kira's pillow and clothes along the way. The next morning, he went to the gas station to withdraw cash from an ATM, knowing that after leaving Kira's car in the shopping center car park, he would need cash to pay for a taxi. After leaving Kira's car, Jeffrey went home and spent the day cleaning. He tried to make it look like Kira had driven away that morning and that nothing had happened. However, this plan was foiled by surveillance cameras. In October 2013, a jury convicted Jeffrey Trevino, 39. They accepted that his actions were not intentional and that they were the result of a heated after discovering that his wife was having an affair. Before the judge handed down his sentence, Kira's family spoke out. "This monster was a calculating criminal," said Carrie Ann Steger, Kira's sister. "He deserves no mercy." Kira's mother, Marcy, said Jeffrey showed no sympathy for her daughter. "He dumped my daughter like a piece of trash into the most polluted water in the country," she said. But her father, Jay, said, "No punishment can ever make up for the pain Jeffrey has caused our family. No amount of time for Jeffrey is enough, never enough," he said. In November 2013, Jeffrey Trevino was sentenced to 27.5 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2031. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Cassie Farrington. Cassie was born on December 22, 1990, in Virginia. She was the second of 4 children to Chuck and Darlene Brooks. Cassie excelled academically and was an active student, she becoming a member of the National Honor Society and participating in sports. Her initial goal was to pursue a career in medicine. However, when Cassie turned 16, her life drastically changed. She became pregnant, which led her to change her future goals and plans. Several major changes in Cassie's life occurred in the next month. Cassie graduated from high school, gave birth to a baby, married Bradley Farrington, and moved out of her parents' house, all within a brief period, just 1 month. Several years later, she had another child. But over time, her family relationship began to deteriorate. Ultimately, the marriage ended in divorce. Despite this, she persevered, raising her 2 young children in Silver City, a small town with a population of about 10,000. At 22 years old, she worked as a nurse at the local hospital and rented a place from a coworker. As she turned 23, Cassie entered into a new relationship with a man named David Barry. He bonded quickly with her children, and she felt grateful for the way things were going good. Rather than rushing into things, they focused on building a life as a family unit. Cassie confided in her loved ones and co-workers that David had brought happiness to both her and her children, and she was hopeful that this new relationship would bring her the peace and happiness she had been missing after her previous failed marriage. On March 24, 2014, Cassie phoned her parents after finishing her night shift at the Silver City Hospital. They chatted for a few minutes, during which she shared her plan to drive home, pick up her children, and take them to school. Afterward, she intended to return home and rest for a couple of hours before picking her children up from school later that day. School staff called Cassie's parents when they couldn't reach her. Her children had finished their classes, but Cassie hadn't shown up to pick them up. Cassie's mother tried calling her, but there was no answer. Thinking Cassie might have overslept after a night shift, her mother asked Cheryl, her landlord, to check if Cassie was home and if she was okay. Cheryl went to the house and knocked on the door, but no one answered. She then walked around the house and peered through the back door window, noticing water pouring from the bathroom into the kitchen. She knocked harder on the door and shouted Cassie's name, but still got no response. With her own key, Cheryl unlocked the door and entered the house. The sound of running water was louder and more distinct. As she walked across the wet floor towards the bathroom, Cheryl called out Cassie's name, her voice shaking slightly. Then she saw Cassie. Cheryl, a coworker and friend of Cassie's, discovered her lifeless body in the overflowing bathtub. She was lying face down, wearing a house robe, as water continued to pour out. Despite Cheryl's first aid skills, she realized that Cassie had been dead for a few hours, as rigor mortis had already set in. This made CPR impossible. Cheryl immediately called 911 to report the incident. She then broke the devastating news to Cassie's parents over the phone, informing them of their daughter's passing. As Cheryl waited for the paramedics and police to arrive, she took a moment to inspect the house. She noticed that the second bathroom, located elsewhere in the house, also had an open faucet with running water. However, the hub there had an overflow protection, so the excess water wasn't running onto the floor but going down the drain. Cheryl also observed that the towel rack in the bathroom had been pulled off the wall and was lying on the floor. Upon receiving the news, Chuck and Darlene, Cassie's parents, were devastated. They stopped everything they were doing and traveled from Arizona to Silver City. Within a few hours, they arrived at the house, where their daughter's body had been found. The police were already on the scene, investigating the circumstances surrounding Cassie's death. The officers observed that there was no sign of forced entry into the house, as all the locks were still in place, the windows were closed, and the glass was intact. Additionally, valuables in the house were still intact, so the possibility of robbery was unlikely. The local sheriff questioned Chuck and Darlene, asking if Cassie had any intention of committing suicide and if she had any reason for doing so. However, Chuck and Darlene firmly dismissed this idea and declared that there was no way Cassie would do such a thing. The police chief repeatedly told Cassie's parents that she had likely taken her own life, as if he was trying to convince them of that fact. However, Cassie's parents found the police investigation to be rushed and confusing. Normally, the scene of the case is thoroughly examined and investigated, a process that can take several days. In Cassie's case, the police left the scene just a few hours after her body was found, and they informed Cheryl that she was allowed to enter and use the house. This worries Cassie's parents and they decide to investigate the house themselves. After finding water still in the bathtub, they emptied it and discovered black streaks on the sides of the tub that resembled the marks left by rubber-soled shoes. They also found Cassie's glasses, hair band, and a coat hanger in various places on the floor. Cassie's parents were even more suspicious when the police didn't take the time to search the house for fingerprints. They suspected that the authorities might be trying to close the case quickly without thoroughly investigating it. It wasn't until they contacted the district attorney's office that the police appeared to put in more effort. However, they were still unable to close the case due to the findings of the medical examiner. The autopsy report showed that Cassie had several bruises on her body, particularly around her neck. The examiner concluded that her death was a homicide. However, the investigation had difficulty by the property owner having cleaned up and made some repairs after the incident. This meant that the original crime scene had been disturbed, which could impact the investigation's progress. Cassie's parents were met with silence from the police as the months went by. The police did investigate David Berry, a man Cassie had been seeing before her death, but he was quickly ruled out as a suspect due to a solid alibi. However, as time passed, Cassie's parents grew increasingly frustrated with the local police, feeling they were not doing enough to solve the case. Their concerns led Chuck and Darlene to request a meeting with the chief district attorney to voice their dissatisfaction with the handling of the investigation, specifically with Detective Jose Sanchez. After reviewing the case file, the district attorney agreed with the parents, finding that Jose had made numerous errors. As a result, Jose was removed from the case and a more experienced detective took over. From the start, Cassie's family and friends suspected her ex-husband, Bradley Farrington, was responsible for her death. At the time of Cassie's passing, Cassie and Bradley was entangled in a heated custody battle over their children. And Bradley stood to gain the most from Cassie's death, because he will win custody of the child. Bradley Farrington is a former Silver City police officer who had just retired a few months before Cassie's death, and his good relationship with investigators kept him from being considered a suspect. However, Bradley had a clear motive for the crime and possessed the necessary knowledge to destroy evidence. He was well aware of police procedures and how to cover his tracks. For example, the bath water will wash away any remaining DNA evidence on the body, as well as erase shoe prints on the floor. Given Cassie's familiarity with Bradley, it's likely that she would have opened the door for him. Unfortunately, due to the poor handling of the investigation by the local police, so any evidence linking Bradley and to the crime scene was lost and could not be restored. The only remaining way to hold Bradley accountable is through eyewitness testimony. Cassie had told her parents about their family being abused by Bradley, and that he often acted arrogant because he was a police officer. Cassie lived in constant fear, and Bradley's friends were police officers and she couldn't turn to them for help. She had confided in co-workers about Bradley's threats, including the ominous threat that he would make her disappear without a trace. Tragically, her life was cut short, and she was found dead on March 24, 2014. 19 months later, on October 23, 2015, 28-year-old Bradley Farrington was arrested in connection with Cassie's death. Although Bradley was a suspect, the local police mishandled evidence, leaving none that directly linked him to the crime. As a result, the judge made a decision permitting previously recorded statements from Cassie to be used as testimony during the trial. During the trial, multiple witnesses testified, including Cassie's parents, friends, and co-workers, to whom she had confided about the abuse she endured at the hands of Bradley. Notable among the witnesses was Dr. Michael Hunter, a renowned forensic expert from San Francisco. With over 20 years of experience, Michael presented the jury with autopsy photographs and concluded that Cassie likely died from strangulation. Cassie had injuries to her neck, which supported that conclusion. After a warrant was issued for Bradley's arrest, Jose Sanchez, who initially handled the case, appeared in court. Jose claimed he had never considered Bradley Farrington a suspect because there was no reason to, and also testified that no fingerprints of Bradley were found at Cassie's home. The crime scene was unusually clean, Jose said. He believed the scene was cleaned after the crime was committed, which explains why no fingerprints were found. After 4.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Bradley Farrington guilty on September 7, 2018. Bradley was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. He later filed an appeal with the New Mexico Supreme Court in 2020. Bradley appealed his conviction, claiming the trial court erred in allowing Cassie's co-workers, friends, and family members to testify in court. However, the state's highest court declared it had enough evidence to convict Bradley and rejected his appeal. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Rebecca Payne. Rebecca Payne was born on April 19, 1986, in New Milford, Connecticut, to Virginia and Nicholas Payne. She was their only child. Rebecca attended New Milford High School, graduating in 2004. During her high school years, she was an active athlete. After high school, Rebecca enrolled in Northeastern University in Boston, where she pursued a degree in athletic training. This 5-year program focused on the care and prevention of athletic injuries. In her 4th year, Rebecca held leadership positions, including a spot on the Dean's Council and serving as president of the Athletic Training Club. She played a key role in organizing the university's vision for the Future Athletic Training Leadership Forum and was also involved with the Episcopal Lutheran Center. Rebecca was known for her friendly and approachable nature. She had a large circle of friends and was always willing to lend a helping hand. At 6:30 a.m. on May 20, 2008, Boston police received a call from the manager of the Parker Hill apartment complex. The man was in a panic. He told the police that he had seen a door ajar in a 3rd-floor apartment. A 22-year-old student, Rebecca Payne, lived in the apartment. When he knocked on the door and called her name, no one answered him. And he decided to go inside. There, he immediately saw dark red spots and stripes on the floor that led him to one of the rooms. He found Rebecca lying on the floor, with no signs of life and her belongings scattered. When police arrived at the crime scene, they observed that the front door showed no signs of forced entry, suggesting that Rebecca may have known her attacker and may have let herself in willingly. Her 3rd-floor apartment had 2 bedrooms, and Rebecca's body was found face down on the floor in the bedroom. A trail of blood led from the living room to the bedroom, suggesting that the attack occurred in the living room, as there were traces of shell casings in that room. Forensic examinations showed that Rebecca had been shot 5 times. Blood stains in the apartment suggested that she had been conscious for some time, attempting to crawl to the bedroom before losing strength. Her valuables were still there. The state of disarray in her apartment was suspicious, leading police to believe that the perpetrator may have deliberately created the mess to distract them. Additionally, the mess may have been caused by Rebecca's struggle for life. When they searched the apartment, police observed that both the balcony door and the front door were open. Signs in the second bedroom suggested that someone else had been living there. Identifying this person became a top priority for the police, as they were likely Rebecca's killer. After speaking with the apartment manager, police discovered that Rebecca lived with another student in her apartment, prompting police to begin searching for the student. At the same time, police interviewed residents of Parker Hill Apartments, some of whom reported hearing a woman scream and gunshots between 3 and 4 a.m. Unfortunately, no one reported the incident to the police. Rebecca Payne's tragic death left her parents reeling, not only from the loss of their daughter, but also from the appalling indifference of their neighbors. Despite hearing Rebecca's screams and gunshots, no one called for help. Rebecca's parents described her as a vibrant and compassionate young woman. She had a big heart and was known for putting others before herself, always looking to help those in need. In the aftermath of her death, police interviewed residents of the apartment complex where Rebecca lived. One man, who lived on the first floor, reported seeing a black SUV approach the building at night. However, due to the darkness, he was unable to see the car's license plates or identify who got out of the vehicle. The apartment building where the crime took place had both internal and external surveillance cameras. However, when police asked the building manager for the footage, they discovered that the cameras only allowed for real-time viewing. The outdated equipment required a video cassette to be inserted into a VCR and manually recorded, but no one had done so. Given this information, along with the fact that the manager was the one who found Rebecca's body, police began to suspect him of the crime. As a resident of the building, he had constant access to Rebecca's apartment and was aware that the surveillance cameras were not being monitored. The suspicion against the manager grew when a background check revealed his past run-ins with the law, specifically related to prohibited substances. Furthermore, an officer noticed dark red stains on the front door of the manager's apartment, which were swabbed and sent for examination. The manager was taken to the police station for questioning, where he denied any involvement in Rebecca's death, claiming he spent the entire night in his apartment with his wife. The police also spoke with his wife to verify his alibi. The woman's husband was initially a suspect, but his wife provided an alibi for his whereabouts during the night of the crime. Laboratory results showed that the dark red stains on his apartment door were just paint, leading the police to release him due to lack of evidence. Police investigating the case reviewed video and photo materials from the scene and focused on a public transportation card found near the crime scene. This card, used to pay for public transport in the Boston area, stores data on its usage, including the location and time of each use. Traffic police provided police with surveillance camera footage of the card being used. After reviewing the recordings, police determined that the card belonged to Rebecca and was used by her on the night she went missing. The footage showed Rebecca walking home, appearing calm and alone, with no signs of anyone following her. Unfortunately, this discovery did not lead to any new leads on the identity of the offender. The police obtained another video from a surveillance camera located outside the hospital building, near the Parker Hill Apartments. This video captured a black SUV driving by at the time of Rebecca's attack. Although the video was poor quality, preventing the officers from seeing the license plates, it did appear to match the description given by the witness, and the detectives believed it was a Ford vehicle. Meanwhile, detectives interviewed Rebecca's roommate at the police station. The roommate expressed shock at Rebecca's death and stated that she had been living with her parents while studying for an exam. This alibi was verified by her parents, clearing her of suspicion. However, the conversation was still fruitful, as she provided potentially valuable information that could aid the investigation. According to Rebecca's roommate, Matt, Rebecca's boyfriend, had access to their apartment. To determine if Matt had a motive to harm Rebecca, police reached out to him by phone. Matt explained that he had moved to New York State to live with his parents around the time of the attack. He claimed to be depressed over Rebecca's death. Matt stated that he had been staying with his parents, and they confirmed his alibi. Police obtained a record of Matt's cell phone activity, revealing a conversation with Rebecca on the night of the attack, around midnight, a few hours before her death. However, the cell tower that received the signal from Matt's phone was located near his parents' house in New York State. To verify Matt's alibi, police conducted an experiment and concluded that it would have been impossible for him to drive from his parents' house to Boston in 3 or 4 hours, making it unlikely that he committed the crime. As a result, Matt was ruled out as a suspect. Rebecca's family and friends traveled to her home state of Connecticut to say goodbye, but the police investigation into Rebecca's death stalled. Despite their efforts, no new evidence was found, no witnesses came forward, and no DNA samples were collected. The case appeared to have reached a dead end. Years went by. In 2012, a breakthrough occurred. Anthony White was arrested by the Boston police for trafficking illegal substances and faced a lengthy prison sentence. In an attempt to reduce his sentence, Anthony offered to provide police with information about the night Rebecca Payne died. Recognizing this as a potential opportunity to solve the long-standing case, the police accepted Anthony's offer. Anthony declared that, on May 20, 2008, Anthony received a call from Cornell Smith, an acquaintance involved in the same illicit activities as him. Cornell requested a meeting, and Anthony agreed. Cornell arrived with their mutual friend Michael Balba, who drove a black SUV. The three of them went to the Parker Hill Apartments, where Michael parked in a spot with a clear view of the building. When Cornell spotted Rebecca in a third-floor window, he identified her. They waited until the lights in her apartment went out, assuming she had fallen asleep. Cornell then climbed from the first-floor balcony to the third-floor balcony, where he found the door to the apartment open. However, upon entering, he found Rebecca awake and lying on the couch in the living room. She began screaming when she saw him, and a brief struggle ensued. Cornell shot her 5 times before fleeing the apartment through the front door and escaping with Anthony and Michael in the SUV. Police questioned the credibility of Anthony's testimony, suspecting that he had fabricated the story based on news reports in order to get a reduced sentence. Police did not understand Cornell's motives, as Rebecca had no connection to him. However, according to Anthony, Rebecca's death was a case of mistaken identity. 2 sisters who lived on the first floor of Parker Hill Apartments looked very similar to Rebecca. The sisters were Cornell's rivals in the illegal drug trade. In retaliation, Cornell targeted Parker Hill Apartments, but he was not sure which floor or apartment the sisters lived in. When he saw Rebecca at the window, Cornell mistook her for one of his enemy sisters. Police looked into Cornell Smith's past and found that in February 2008, he was arrested for dealing illegal substances. Shortly before Rebecca's death, Cornell was released on bail. According to Anthony White's statement in 2012, Cornell wanted revenge against the sisters. However, when Anthony White came forward, Cornell Smith was already serving a 12-year sentence in prison for another conviction. With Anthony's new testimony, Cornell was then also charged in Rebecca's murder. Cornell denied his involvement, though. Before the case could go to trial, the key witness, Anthony White, died in prison. There was no longer any evidence to prove Cornell's involvement in the murder of Rebecca Payne. Since Anthony White was dead, the police needed new testimony from Michael Balba, who was with Anthony and Cornell on the night of the murder, in order to convict Cornell Smith. Michael was arrested and taken to the police station, but without evidence, he denied involvement and requested a lawyer. As a result, hopes of solving the case seemed lost. In a final attempt to find a connection between Cornell and Rebecca's death, the police looked into Cornell's case files in connection with a separate case of drug trafficking. During the search, the police came across letters written by Cornell Smith to the judge. These letters revealed Cornell's arrogant attitude towards others, some of which seemed meaningless. However, one letter contained a crucial piece of evidence that linked Cornell to Rebecca's death. It remains unclear why these letters had not been scrutinized earlier, despite being addressed to the judge. The discovery of this key evidence ultimately helped police build a case against Cornell. In a letter written out of anger, Cornell referenced an altercation that had taken place in downtown Boston, leading to the unfortunate death of Rebecca Payne at the hands of Cornell. This letter confirmed that Cornell was in Rebecca's apartment at the time of the incident. The trial took place in 2015. Jeffrey Karp, a defense attorney with more than 20 years of experience, was the first attorney to represent Cornell. However, Jeffrey withdrew from the case after an incident. Cornell suddenly stood up and struck Jeffrey Karp in the head with his handcuffed hand, causing chaos in the Suffolk County Superior Court in Massachusetts. Jeffrey Karp then opted not to prosecute, instead allowing the judge to appoint a new attorney for Cornell. Cornell Smith took a plea deal and pleaded guilty to taking the life of Rebecca Payne as part of the deal. He received a prison sentence of 18 to 20 years from the judge. To honor Rebecca's memory, her hometown renamed the local tennis court after her. A garden and a National Athletic Trainers Association scholarship fund have also been established in her name. According to Rebecca's father, Nicholas Payne, these tributes were created with one main goal in mind: we don't want her to be forgotten. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Alex Murdaugh. Alex Murdaugh attempted to follow in his family's footsteps by pursuing a law degree from the University of North Carolina, where he met his future wife, Margaret Maggie Branton. They started dating in 1991 and got married 2 years later, on August 14, 1993, at the Second Presbyterian Church in South Carolina. Alex and Maggie had 2 sons, Richard Buster Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh. Alex joined his family's law firm, PMPD, as a personal injury attorney, aiming to continue his family's legacy. However, unlike his ancestors, Alex misused the power and influence his family's firm provided, covering up financial crimes, theft, and possibly even murder. For over a decade, Alex's dishonest dealings went unnoticed until his youngest son, Paul, was involved in a fatal boating accident. This incident was the latest in a series of suspicious deaths surrounding the Murdaugh family, leading people to speculate that these accidents were not coincidental and were instead part of a larger cover-up, given the family's history and resources. Here's what happened on February 23, 2019. Paul Murdaugh, fresh out of high school, took his family's boat to Pookas Island for a party with friends. The group, including his girlfriend Morgan Dowie, Anthony Cook, and Miley Allman, wanted an unsupervised night of fun. They planned a house party and oyster roast on the island. To make the night complete, Paul used his older brother's ID to buy beer and hard liquor. They left the Murdaugh River House around 7 p.m. and continued partying until midnight. Feeling restless, Paul suggested driving the boat to downtown Beaufort, where he and his friend Connor had 2 rounds of shots at around 1 a.m. As they headed back to the boat, a surveillance camera caught a tender moment between Anthony and Mallory. Paul, who was heavily intoxicated, started acting strangely on a boat ride with friends. At 1:15 a.m., the group got back on the water, but things quickly spiraled out of control. Paul drove the boat in circles, showing signs of intoxication, and got into an argument with the others. Anthony wanted to get out on a nearby rock, but Paul refused. GPS footage later showed that the boat's speed increased at some point. Although Paul denied deliberately speeding up, he was in control of the wheel. The boat crashed into Arrow Creek Bridge at 2:20 a.m., throwing Mallory into the water. The others were severely injured. Connor broke his jaw, and Morgan's hand was badly hurt. Connor called 911, and help arrived soon after. When the deputy sheriff arrived, he saw blood in the main compartment and a large split in the hull from the impact. All the teenagers involved were extremely drunk, and everyone except Anthony required hospital treatment. Paul refused treatment despite being extremely agitated and having a blood alcohol level of 0.243, significantly higher than the legal limit. The search for Mallory's body took 8 days, and she was found to have died from a combination of blunt force trauma to the head and drowning. Despite multiple eyewitnesses stating that Paul was out of control while driving the boat, he was not arrested or charged. This led to rumors that Alex Murdaugh had used his influence to protect his son from justice. In March 2019, the Murdaugh family was served with a wrongful death lawsuit. Mallory's family alleged that Paul's mother, Maggie, was aware that her son was drunk when they went boating, and that Buster had helped them obtain fake IDs to buy alcohol. Paul was finally charged with 3 felonies on April 18, 2019, but he never made it to court because he died before his trial. A series of mysterious deaths have been linked to the Murdaugh family. One incident involved Stephen Smith, a gay teenager, who was found dead on July 8, 2015. His official cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, and it was initially ruled a hit-and-run incident with no suspect arrested. However, Stephen's mother believed he was the victim of a hate crime. There were rumors that Stephen was in a relationship with Alex Murdaugh's oldest son, Buster, and that Buster might have been involved in Stephen's death. Gloria Satterfield, the Murdaugh family's longtime housekeeper, died on February 26, 2018, due to complications from a severe head injury. Alex Murdaugh claimed that his dogs had caused her to trip and fall, but there was no autopsy to confirm this account. The case was reopened on March 22, 2023, and it was revealed that Gloria's death was actually a murder, although no suspects have been named. Alex Murdaugh's family was involved in a wrongful death lawsuit after his housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, died in 2018. The lawsuit resulted in a $4.3 million insurance policy settlement, but the money never reached Satterfield's sons. Instead, Murdaugh allegedly conspired with his friend Corey Fleming, a lawyer and godfather to one of Murdaugh's sons, to steal the payout. The money was diverted to Murdaugh's bank account, and the Satterfield family was never notified. Satterfield's sons filed a new civil lawsuit against Murdaugh in September 2021. On the same day, state investigators opened a criminal investigation into Satterfield's death, citing inconsistencies in the coroner's report. The Satterfield family allowed authorities to exhume Satterfield's body for further investigation. Meanwhile, Murdaugh was facing numerous financial and embezzlement charges. He was allegedly involved in a money laundering and painkiller ring with his distant cousin Curtis Smith, which lasted from 2013 to 2021. On September 4, 2021, Murdaugh orchestrated a scheme in which Smith shot him in an attempt to collect a $10 million life insurance policy. However, the bullet only caused superficial injuries, and Murdaugh was able to call 911 himself. Days later, Murdaugh confessed to the scheme and was charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and filing a false police report. He surrendered himself and was taken into custody. 2 days later, he announced his resignation from his family's law firm and entered rehab. However, it was soon revealed that Murdaugh had misappropriated $792,000 from his law firm. His law license was indefinitely suspended in September 2021. Investigators continued to uncover numerous financial crimes, tax evasions, and embezzlements committed by Murdaugh. After leaving rehab, Murdaugh was arrested again and charged with 2 felony counts of obtaining property by false pretenses. He was denied bond and later indicted on 27 counts of financial misconduct, accused of stealing money from clients, lawyers, and the Satterfield family. Alex Murdaugh faced additional charges on December 9, 2021, with 21 new counts added to the existing 27, bringing the total to 48. The charges included forgery, money laundering, computer crimes, breach of trust, and obtaining signature or property by false pretenses. It was estimated that Murdaugh had stolen over $6.2 million from his victims. The state's investigation into his business dealings took months, with new charges emerging almost daily. By June 2022, the charges against him had risen to 81, and by the time he was formally disbarred on July 13, 2022, he faced 84 criminal charges and 11 lawsuits. One of the victims' mothers filed a legal claim against the estates of Margaret and Paul Murdaugh, raising questions about the character of the once prominent attorney. Could he be hiding something even more sinister, such as the murder of his wife and son? What could have been his motive? The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLAD, revisited the double murder case, considering new information gathered during the investigation into Murdaugh's financial crimes. They discovered that Alex and Maggie Murdaugh's marriage was troubled, and Maggie was living apart from her husband at their beach home on Edisto Island. Maggie's sister, Marion Proctor, told law enforcement that Maggie had not planned to see Alex on the night of the murders. Alex had asked Maggie to meet him at the family's hunting lodge, where she and her younger son were later found shot dead near the dog kennels. Alex claimed to have taken a long nap before leaving to visit his ailing mother, who suffered from dementia. He stated that he was away for 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and found his wife and son dead upon his return. However, law enforcement suspected that Alex's timeline was questionable and lacked a clear motive for the murders. The investigation revealed that weeks before the murder, the state grand jury had subpoenaed Alex Murdaugh's finances, which threatened to expose his financial wrongdoings. Additionally, his law firm had discovered his misappropriation of company funds, and he was confronted about it on June 7, 2021, the day of the murder. State authorities believed that the financial pressure had pushed Alex to hatch a plan to divert attention from his crimes and garner sympathy in the public eye. 13 months after the fatal shooting, Alex Murdaugh was charged with the murders of his wife and son. The prosecutor alleged that Murdaugh had shot and killed his wife and son at close range with a shotgun and an AR-style rifle. The murder weapons were never found. Murdaugh's defense team argued that two shooters were involved due to the different weapons used. Expert witness testimony suggested that the shooter was likely between 5'2" and 5'4" tall, which ruled out Alex Murdaugh as a suspect due to his 6'4" height. However, under cross-examination, the expert admitted that there were other possible explanations for the bullet trajectory beyond the shooter's height. The investigation revealed that Maggie was shot with 300 blackout ammunition from an AR-style rifle, and a box of this ammo was found at the Murdaugh family estate. Prosecutors argued that Alex killed his wife and son to gain sympathy and avoid accountability for his financial crimes. Alex's lawyers countered that this didn't make sense, as it would only shift attention to himself and put him in the spotlight of a murder investigation. Alex was a person of interest from the start of the investigation, but his lawyer claimed he had an ironclad alibi for the night of the murders and no motive to kill his family. Prosecutors presented two videos taken on the night of the murder, which appeared to show Alex wearing different shirts. The Snapchat video taken from Paul's phone showed Alex wearing a blue shirt, while the body cam footage showed him wearing a different shirt. Investigators couldn't find the blue shirt, and prosecutors suggested Alex tried to influence a key witness's account of what he was wearing. Cell phone data and testimony from Alex's mother's caregiver confirmed that Alex was only at his mother's home for 15 to 20 minutes, contradicting his claim of staying for 45 minutes to an hour and a half. The most crucial piece of evidence was a video found on Paul's phone, recorded at 8:44 p.m., just minutes before the murders. The video featured the voices of Paul, Maggie, and Alex, placing Alex at the scene of the crime. This contradicted his previous alibi and confirmed his presence at the dog kennels where the murders occurred. Alex testified that he didn't shoot his wife or son, but admitted to lying about his alibi. Alex Murdaugh changed his story, claiming that his opioid addiction and resulting paranoia led him to lie to law enforcement. However, prosecutors argued that Murdaugh fabricated this excuse after murdering his wife and son. They believed he used his wife's phone to create an alibi by making calls and sending texts, including "Call me, babe," at 9:47 p.m. Phone data showed that Murdaugh's and his wife's phones locked simultaneously, and Alex's phone recorded a sudden increase in steps around the time of the murder. Prosecutors suggested this was evidence of him trying to hide or dispose of evidence, but his lawyers disputed this, pointing out that the step patterns on Alex's phone did not match his wife's. The decisive evidence came from a video recorded at the dog kennels. After deliberating for just 3 hours, the jury found Murdaugh guilty on all counts on March 2, 2023. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without parole. Additionally, he received a 5-year sentence for possession of a weapon during a violent crime. Murdaugh pleaded guilty to 22 financial crimes as part of a deal, but maintains his innocence in the murders. He appealed his conviction on March 9, 2023. In a surprise move, his lawyers filed a motion for a new trial, alleging that Rebecca Hill, a court clerk, had engaged in jury tampering. Hill denies the allegations, which include advising jurors to disregard Murdaugh's testimony and other defense evidence, pressuring them to reach a quick guilty verdict, and misrepresenting critical information to the trial judge. A hearing is scheduled for Murdaugh's lawyers to present evidence and witnesses to support their claim. However, a judge has not yet been assigned to preside over the hearing. With over 100 financial and drug crime charges pending, as well as multiple lawsuits, it is clear that the Alex Murdaugh case is far from over. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Chris Watts. Shanann Rzucek and Christopher Watts, both from North Carolina, met in 2012. Shanann was from Aberdeen and Chris was from Spring Lake. They tied the knot on November 3, 2012, but not everyone was thrilled about their union. Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie Watts, didn't attend the wedding, with Cindy later explaining that she didn't get along with Shanann and didn't like how she treated her son. A year after getting married, Shanann and Chris moved to Frederick, Colorado, marking a fresh start in their lives. They were excited to start a family and eventually welcomed 2 daughters, Bella Marie, born on December 17, 2013, and Celeste Catherine, Cece, born on July 17, 2015. Shanann had been diagnosed with lupus, a chronic autoimmune disease, at a young age. Despite the challenges this presented for getting pregnant, Shanann defied the odds and became a mother twice. She was known for her kindness, compassion, and positivity, and was determined to create a happy life for herself and her family. Shanann was a loving and exceptional mother, and her vibrant personality drew people to her. Every morning, she would send her friends heartfelt texts that read, "Good morning, beautiful," making them feel cherished and uplifted. Her daughters, Bella and Cece, were the center of her universe, and she devoted herself to nurturing and supporting them. Shanann was active on social media, sharing videos that offered a glimpse into her daily life and that of her daughters. Her friends and family cherished these videos, which showcased her warm personality. In many of these videos, Shanann expressed her deep admiration for her husband, Chris, portraying him as a loving husband and father. However, those close to the family found Chris difficult to connect with on a deeper level, as he tended to keep to himself. Despite their reservations, Shanann's family and friends accepted Chris because of her deep love for him. However, the couple was struggling financially, and in June 2015, They filed for bankruptcy due to a heavy mortgage, multiple car payments, loans, medical bills, and significant credit card debt. At the time, Chris worked at Anadarko Petroleum, while Shanann worked at a children's hospital call center. However, by 2016, Shanann had changed careers, becoming a consultant for a multi-level marketing company, selling a nutritional supplement administered through a patch. Shanann loved her job, and it showed. As her co-worker Cynthia de Rosette put it, she had a way of making everyone she met feel her positive energy. Despite being happy with her life, Shanann had one wish: to have a baby boy to complete her family with her husband and 2 daughters. In spring 2018, Shanann got an unexpected but wonderful surprise. She was pregnant again. Overjoyed and excited, she wanted to capture her husband Chris's reaction. So she planned to surprise him on May 28th with the news. Further tests confirmed Shanann was having a baby boy. Shanann and Chris chose the name Nico for their new baby. When they told their daughters, Bella and Cece, they would be big sisters, the girls were happy. In the summer of 2018, when Shanann was pregnant with Nico, she visited her family in North Carolina while Chris stayed behind in Colorado for work. Shanann took her daughters, Bella and Cece, to visit Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie, despite having a strained relationship with them. During the visit, Cindy prepared a snack for Cece without considering Shanann's prior warning about Cece's severe nut allergy. As a result, the snack contained peanuts, which put Cece's life in danger. Shanann was deeply disturbed by this incident, feeling that Cindy had recklessly disregarded her granddaughter's safety. Shanann expressed her outrage and disappointment in a text message to Chris, accusing his mother of intentionally trying to provoke her by putting Cece's life at risk. She urged Chris to confront his father about Cindy's behavior, implying that if Chris didn't take action, it would suggest he was complicit in his mother's harmful actions, and that Shanann's concerns for her children's safety were justified. While Shanann was visiting her family in North Carolina, she noticed a sudden change in Chris's communication style. He stopped responding to her messages and calls, leaving her confused and concerned. When she asked him what was going on, Chris explained that he had taken on more responsibilities at work due to the arrival of new employees, but reassured her that everything was fine. A week later, Chris flew to North Carolina to spend time with Shanann and their 2 daughters, Bella and Cece. The girls were excited to see their father and ran to hug him as soon as he arrived. Chris was enthusiastic in his greeting, scooping them up in a tight hug. However, his greeting to Shanann was noticeably colder. Instead of a kiss, he simply nodded at her. Shanann felt hurt and surprised by Chris's distant behavior, and she couldn't help but confide in a friend about her growing concerns through a text message. Shanann felt like she was living with a stranger, not the man she married. She was saddened and confused by the change in Chris. When they were in the same room, he refused to talk to her, and instead, they communicated through their phones. Shanann sent a heartbreaking text to her friend, explaining the situation, and even shared a photo of them sitting on separate couches, facing away from each other. Shanann suspected that Chris might be interested in someone else, which shocked her friend. However, her friend disagreed, saying that Chris loved Shanann too much to do that. But Shanann was devastated because Chris had told her that he no longer thought they were compatible. This was a huge surprise to Shanann, who had always believed their love was strong. Chris had confessed to Shanann that he had hoped getting her pregnant would change his feelings, but it didn't. Shanann was devastated to hear this, as she treasured their relationship and thought their love could overcome any obstacle. Desperate to save her family, Shanann proposed that they attend couples counseling to work through their issues. However, Chris refused. Shanann was willing to do whatever it took to rescue their relationship, but she realized Chris was not willing to meet her halfway. Despite her best efforts, Shanann came to understand that Chris was unwilling to compromise on anything. After their return to Colorado from North Carolina, the family settled back into their routine. However, Shanann soon left for another business trip, this time to Arizona. During her trip to Arizona, Shanann's friends noticed a change in her behavior. She seemed confused, distressed, and not her usual cheerful self. One evening, while they were all in their hotel room, Shanann opened up to her friends about her concerns. She told them that Chris had expressed doubts about their relationship and refused to go to couples therapy. On August 11th, while Shanann was still in Arizona, she received a notification on her phone about a restaurant charge on her and Chris's account. The amount of the charge raised her suspicions, and she wondered if Chris was having dinner with someone else. This made her feel uneasy and doubtful. When Shanann returned home from her trip on August 13th, her friend Nicole Atkinson drove her home. Their doorbell camera captured Shanann entering her house at around 1:48 a.m. The next morning, Shanann's friends became worried when they didn't receive their usual good morning messages from her. They knew she had an important doctor's appointment at 9:30 a.m. and were concerned that something might be wrong. When Shanann missed a 12:30 p.m. business meeting, her close friend Nicole Atkinson became alarmed. As the day went by with no word from Shanann, Nicole's concern grew. She sensed something was off. Feeling a strong urge to act, Nicole drove to Shanann's house. As she arrived, she felt a knot in her stomach. Shanann's van was parked in the garage, and her daily shoes sat by the front door. Nicole knocked on the front door, hoping Shanann would emerge, explaining that she had overslept after her flight the previous day. But there was no response. One of Shanann's friends contacted her husband Chris, telling him they couldn't reach her. Chris reassured them, thinking Shanann might have taken their daughters to a friend's house. Shanann's friends were puzzled by Chris's response because they had all been in touch with each other, and none of them knew where Shanann was. She had no plans to meet up with any of them. As a result, her friends told Chris they planned to contact the Frederick Police Department to report Shanann and their daughters, Bella and Cece, as missing. However, Chris did not want to involve the police. One of Shanann's friends, Nicole, was so worried that she went ahead and called 911 to report the three missing. After Nicole's call, a police officer from the Frederick Police Department arrived at the Watts home. The officer's body cam footage showed Nicole's distress as she explained what she knew about Shanann and her daughters. When Chris arrived, he approached the officer, but unlike Nicole, he did not appear to be very concerned, despite his wife and daughters being missing. During a search of Shanann and Chris's home, the officer found Shanann's purse, which contained her medication and that of her two daughters. This finding concerned Shanann's friend Nicole, but Chris, her husband, remained unusually calm. The officer also discovered Shanann's wedding pants on the bedside table. Afterwards, the officer and Chris went to a neighbor's house to review the footage from their security camera. The camera captured footage of Chris's driveway and garage, showing him opening the garage door, moving around, and leaving the house at 5:28 a.m. When Chris watched the footage with the police, his behavior changed. He became nervous and fidgety, which didn't go unnoticed by his neighbor, who suggested to the officer that Chris wasn't acting normal. Chris's reluctance to search for his wife and daughters, Bella and Cece, raised concerns among Shanann's friends, who found it incomprehensible that he wasn't worried about their disappearance. As the investigation unfolded, the police canvassed the neighborhood, asking residents if they had seen Shanann or anything unusual. The FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation joined the search the next day, along with the Boulder Police Department's cadaver dogs, which searched the property and inside the house. During the search, an officer handling a cadaver dog commented that the house smelled of cleaning products and seemed unusually clean. The officer's suspicions were raised by a comment, leading them to inspect the cleanliness of the home more closely. The presence of cleaning products hinted that someone might have tried to hide evidence or erase potential clues. While his house was being searched, Chris gave an interview to two Denver news stations outside his residence. During the interview, Chris claimed that he and Shanann hadn't argued before she left, but he did mention they had an emotional conversation. Chris appealed to whoever was holding his family, begging for their return and expressing his desire to be reunited with them. He emphasized that his house felt empty without them, but his behavior during the interview raised concerns. Chris appeared cold and unemotional, which surprised those who knew him. Shanann's friends, who watched the interview, were disgusted by Chris's nonchalant demeanor, finding it strange and contradictory to his plea for his family's return. On August 14th, Special Agent Coda conducted an interview with Chris. During the conversation, Chris suggested that Shanann might have taken the girls to a friend's house to unwind. Meanwhile, the police station received a flood of tips about possible sightings of Shanann and the girls. The department received various photos, which Chris was asked to review to see if he could identify his missing wife and daughters. However, he was unable to provide any identifications. Agent Coda also asked Chris about his marriage to Shanann during the interview. Chris claimed that he had never been unfaithful to Shanann, and, to the best of his knowledge, she had never been unfaithful to him either. He explained that they were the type of couple who would confide in each other if they ever felt tempted to stray. One notable aspect of Chris's behavior during the interview caught Agent Coda's attention. Chris frequently made hand movements towards his neck. Agent Coda's intuition was growing stronger, suggesting the movements might be pointing to a more sinister truth. During the interview, Agent Coda stepped out briefly to share his concerns with the other officers, suspecting Chris might have strangled Shanann. As the hours ticked by with no sign of Shanann and her daughters, the loved one's anxiety turned to desperation. Despite their fears for Shanann's safety, they held on to the glimmer of hope that Bella and Cece might still be alive. The lack of updates from the authorities only added to their distress. After a 3-hour interrogation, Chris was released from the police department, but the police instructed him to return the next day, August 15th, for a polygraph test. Here's what happened. Chris agreed to take a polygraph test to help with the investigation into his family's disappearance. On August 15th, Chris picked up his father from the airport and went to the Frederick Police Department, where Tammy Lee from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation administered the test. During the test, Chris denied any involvement in his family's disappearance and claimed not to know where his wife Shanann was. However, the results of the test were not in Chris's favor. This led the detectives to strongly suspect that Chris was responsible for the deaths of his wife and daughters. Tammy Lee, a highly skilled polygrapher, confronted Chris about the test results. Chris admitted that he had caused Shanann emotional pain, but denied physically harming her. He also confessed to having an affair with a co-worker named Nicole Kessinger, which he deeply regretted. Despite his confessions, Chris still denied any involvement in his family's disappearance. At one point, he asked to have his father, Ronnie, present during the interview. The officers were hesitant, worried that this might lead Chris to ask for a lawyer. Chris Watt's father was allowed to accompany him in the interrogation room, a risky move that detectives hoped would prompt Chris to confess. And it worked. Chris admitted to killing Shanann, but claimed he did so because she had harmed their daughters, Bella and Cece. However, this excuse was immediately met with skepticism by Shannann's friends, who knew she would never hurt her children. In fact, Shanann was eagerly awaiting the birth of her third child, a son named Nico. During the interrogation, Chris disclosed the location of Shannann's body, which he had buried in a shallow grave at one of his work sites. He also revealed that he had disposed of his daughters' bodies in oil tanks. Despite this, Chris continued to deny any involvement in their deaths. Even after being arrested and taken into custody, the detectives never believed Shanann was responsible for harming her daughters. In the end, Chris pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. At the sentencing hearing for Chris, the judge expressed outrage over the brutal crime Chris had committed calling it the most inhumane and vicious one he had seen in his entire career of handling thousands of cases. Years later, Chris confessed to murdering his wife Shanann in their bed. According to Chris, he strangled her after she discovered his infidelity and threatened to take their daughters away. Chris then put Shanann's body in his truck and drove to his work site with their 2 daughters. Tragically, Chris admitted to killing his daughters one by one at the site, with one daughter forced to witness the murder of her sister before meeting the same fate. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Suzanne Morphew. Suzanne Morphew was born on April 11, 1971, to Jean and Adrian Alexandria, and grew up with her 2 brothers, David and Andrew. Those who knew Suzanne describe her as an intelligent, thoughtful, and caring friend. In 1998, while in high school, she met her future husband, Barry Morphew. After 6 years of dating, they got married. Barry was an exceptional baseball player and was signed with the Toronto Blue Jays. Meanwhile, Suzanne pursued a degree in education at Purdue University. However, Barry's sports career was cut short due to a serious injury, and he switched to a career in horticulture. Suzanne had been teaching for 4 years when Barry started his landscape company, which gradually gained momentum. The couple had 2 children, Mallory and Macy. They lived a picture-perfect life in Indiana until Suzanne was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Despite beating cancer twice, in 2018, the Morphew family decided to move to Mayville, Colorado, for a fresh start and to be closer to their daughter Mallory, who attended Western State University. They settled into a stunning 7-acre property where Barry could hunt and continue his work as a contractor. He also became a volunteer firefighter. Suzanne retired from teaching and dedicated more time to her church and her new hobby, sports mountain biking. The Morphew family seemed perfect from the outside, but they had their secrets. It wasn't until May 10, 2020, that their problems came to light. That Mother's Day started off like any other at the Morphew residence. Barry and their daughters left the house, leaving Suzanne alone. Barry claimed he had a landscaping appointment in Broomfield, 3 hours away from Mayville by car. Meanwhile, the girls went on a camping trip. Barry and the girls planned to return home that evening to celebrate Mother's Day with Suzanne. However, when they didn't hear back from her, they started to worry. The girls sent her a message to wish her a happy Mother's Day, but got no response. This was unusual, since Suzanne was very active on social media. They expected her to be on her phone, especially since she was supposed to attend her best friend's daughter's wedding and share some photos. After several hours of no response, Mallory and Macy grew concerned and asked their neighbor, Martin Ritter, and his wife to check on Suzanne. Mrs. Ritter went to the Morphew house between 4 and 4:30 p.m. and found it empty. Barry's wife called him to explain the situation, and he advised her to check if Suzanne's mountain bike was still at the Morphew residence. If it wasn't there, he told her to contact the police, which is exactly what she did. The police arrived at the Morphew residence, and Barry, along with his 2 daughters, returned home, eager to learn about Suzanne's whereabouts and condition. A few hours into the search, the police discovered their first significant lead. 2 deputies found Suzanne's mountain bike near a steep ravine, not far from the Murphys' home. This suggested that Suzanne might have been involved in a crash. However, there were no signs of a struggle on the bike or in the surrounding vegetation, and no skid marks indicating that she had used her brakes. Despite the mountain bike being found at the bottom of a ravine with no damage, and no signs of struggle or disturbance to the surrounding vegetation, detectives suspected foul play. When presented with this evidence, Barry's reaction was unusual, and his subsequent explanation, that a mountain lion must have moved the bike, seemed far-fetched. Many people found Barry's behavior during the investigation into his wife's disappearance to be suspicious. In a private conversation with YouTuber Tyson Draper, Barry elaborated on his mountain lion theory. Notably, He was absent from the search parties organized by Suzanne's brother, Andrew, who was skeptical of Barry's account of the bike ride and suggested that Suzanne might have gone missing on May 9th instead of Mother's Day. As the investigation continued, suspicion shifted to Barry when Suzanne's helmet was discovered 1 mile from their home, precisely in the direction his truck's telemetry showed he had driven that morning. This discovery was particularly incriminating because it was in the opposite direction of the Broomfield construction site, which was his alleged destination that day. During the initial police interview, the suspect claimed he woke up to his alarm clock at 4:30 a.m. and drove directly to the Broomfield construction site. However, the telematic data from his Ford F-350 revealed that he drove 1 mile west before heading to the site. When confronted with this discrepancy, the suspect provided an explanation. He stated that he had gone scouting for elk that morning around 4:30 a.m. and was curious to see which direction they were headed so he could track them down later. He allegedly had a habit of tranquilizing elk and removing their antlers for sale. But when the officers questioned how he could have spotted elk at 4:30 a.m. if he was just waking up, he changed his story. He claimed he didn't set his alarm for 4:30 a.m. and woke up on his own. When questioned about the day of the disappearance, he stated it was one of the best days the couple had had in a while. He said he worked with a co-worker in Salita that morning, returned early, went for a hike with Susan, and then they grilled steak and were intimate together. Barry claimed that he and his wife Suzanne went to bed together, suggesting it might have been the last time they saw each other. However, as we've established, Barry is not a trustworthy witness. When the police investigated, they discovered that Barry had lied about almost everything that occurred that night. The first indication that something was amiss came when investigators reviewed Barry's phone and vehicle data on May 9, 2020. Although Barry and Suzanne did spend the afternoon and evening together, the events didn't match Barry's story. The first significant discrepancy arose between 2:42 and 2:44. Phone records showed Barry making erratic movements around the property. When questioned, Barry claimed he was likely hunting chipmunks with tranquilizers at 2:47 p.m. Then, Barry turned his phone to airplane mode, which remained active until 10:17 p.m. Furthermore, the steak dinner he claimed to have shared with his wife was called into question when investigators found only one dirty dish instead of two. Later that night, more peculiarities emerged on the Morphew property. During their examination of the data, the police found several concerning details that raised suspicions about Barry's activities later that night. At 9:30 p.m., an hour after he claimed to have gone to sleep with his wife, his car was seen reversing backward from the driveway, moving 96 feet. Investigators thought this might be when he loaded her body onto his truck, if he was guilty. The records also showed that between 3:25 and 3:48, the door to his truck opened and closed over 80 times. Although this evidence was circumstantial, it suggested that Barry was not telling the police everything, prompting a closer investigation into the events of May 10th. Further investigation revealed that Barry had no legitimate reason to be in Broomfield that day. His company's contract was not set to start until a week later, so there was no project for him to inspect. Barry claimed that he had only visited the Holiday Inn, the job site, a local store for granola and water, and briefly stopped at McDonald's to clean his windshield. However, surveillance footage obtained by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation contradicted his account. Barry was caught on camera throwing away 5 trash bags near McDonald's and the Holiday Inn. When questioned about it, he gave a suspicious explanation, claiming he was trying to avoid waste disposal fees by cleaning his car himself. However, when officers inspected his car, his story fell apart. A co-worker reported a strong smell of bleach and chlorine in Barry's hotel room a day after Suzanne disappeared. Additionally, investigators found that Barry had changed his clothes multiple times that day. Despite these suspicious actions, The investigators initially found no clear motive for Barry's behavior, but when they dug deeper into their personal lives, they discovered a motive. Barry and Suzanne's daughter revealed that the couple's marriage was not as happy as Barry made it out to be. Text messages on Suzanne's recovered phone and personal belongings proved this. In fact, Suzanne was extremely unhappy in the marriage and talked about how Barry refused to consider divorce. Suzanne kept a list of grievances on her phone, detailing a pattern of physical abuse. She was afraid to be alone in a room with Barry and worried about his drinking. She also suspected him of infidelity and tried to protect her phone from him, fearing he would seize it. On May 20th, when the police searched the Morphew house, they found a pen that Suzanne had bought to catch her husband in the act. Ironically, it recorded her own infidelity, not his. The pen revealed that Suzanne was having an affair with a man named Jeff, a high school acquaintance. The affair allegedly started in 2018 and had lasted for about 1.5 years. Although Jeff seemed like an obvious suspect, the police were able to clear him of any involvement in Suzanne's disappearance. The investigators believed that Barry had discovered Suzanne's infidelity, and that a note she wrote 2 days before she vanished supported this theory. The note indicated that Barry had accused Suzanne of having a boyfriend. The spy pen was crucial evidence, but it was not the only important discovery made during the search of the Morphew house. The police also found a tranquilizer dart cap in the family's dryer, a spent bullet casing in the bedroom, a large crack in the doorframe, and remnants of Suzanne's journal in the fireplace. When combined with telematic data, these findings suggested that Barry might have planned and carried out the murder of his wife, possibly killing her in the afternoon of May 9th, 2020. After texting her boyfriend 53 times and sending a selfie at around 2:10 p.m., Suzanne never used her phone again. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the public learned Barry was a suspect in his wife's disappearance, when the police conducted a 2-day excavation of a construction site in Salida, one of Barry's job sites. In response, Barry released a strange video proclaiming his innocence. However, he wasn't arrested until May 5, 2021, nearly a year after the investigation began. Although the evidence against Barry was largely circumstantial, the prosecution seemed confident in their case due to his changing stories, repeated lies, and clear motive. Barry was charged with multiple crimes, including first-degree murder of his wife, tampering with physical evidence, possession of a dangerous weapon, and attempting to influence a public servant. Moreover, he was later charged with filing a fraudulent election ballot in Suzanne's name, claiming he didn't know it was wrong and that it would help Trump's campaign. Barry pleaded guilty to this charge and paid a $600 fine. In August 2021, a preliminary hearing was held to determine whether Barry Morse's case would proceed to trial. During this 4-day hearing, the prosecution presented their evidence and proposed a theory of what might have occurred. According to the prosecution, Barry murdered his wife on May 9, 2020, then dismembered her body in a hotel room. He allegedly disposed of the tools used and buried her body in an unmarked grave. However, the defense strongly challenged the prosecution's account, highlighting several inconsistencies. They pointed out that cadaver dogs were unable to detect any human remains in Barry's car or the hotel room where the alleged dismemberment took place. The defense also suggested that the dart bullet cover might have been planted as evidence. Furthermore, they noted visual discrepancies in the photos of the dryer, with one image showing the cap inside the dryer and another image showing it was not present. The defense argued that Barry couldn't have used his dart gun in the alleged murder because it was broken at the time. However, their strongest evidence was the discovery of partial DNA on Suzanne's car and bike helmet that didn't match Barry. This DNA actually matched evidence from 3 unsolved sexual assault cases in Chicago and Arizona, raising reasonable doubt about Barry's guilt. The discovery was significant, but it was only brought up during the hearing, because the CBI investigator who collected the evidence went on military leave before following up on the lead. To make matters worse, the defense was never informed about the foreign DNA matches and only learned about them during the hearing. This meant the prosecution had withheld important evidence that could have helped the defense. Throughout the hearing, the defense argued that the presence of another suspect with a criminal record meant the prosecution didn't have enough evidence to convict Barry of killing his wife. They asked the judge to make a quick decision, but surprisingly, he delayed it, citing the large amount of time and resources invested in the case. On September 7th, the judge ruled that the case against Barry would proceed, setting his bail at $500,000. Barry was released from county jail on September 20th, 2021, just 9 days before the trial was scheduled to start. However, in a surprising turn of events, the prosecution suddenly filed a motion to dismiss all charges against Barry without prejudice, allowing them to potentially reopen the case if new evidence emerges. Given the lack of concrete evidence proving Barry's guilt and the prosecution's misconduct, securing a conviction would have been a difficult task. Moreover, the prosecution had missed several crucial deadlines, resulting in sanctions that prevented 14 key witnesses from testifying at the trial. The news of the dismissal shocked the public, and Barry was pictured leaving the courthouse with a wide smile, accompanied by his 2 daughters. On September 22, 2023, investigators unearthed multiple shallow graves in Moffett, Colorado, during an investigation. Suzanne's remains were identified using her dental records and chemotherapy port. Surprisingly, over 50 miles away from the initial search area, focused on the mountains surrounding Barry's property. The discovery of her body raises questions about Barry's potential involvement in the murder. Although the police are certain Barry's truck was not in Moffett on May 9th and 10th, some suggest he could have had an accomplice in disposing of Suzanne's body, allowing him to travel to Moffett, bury the body, and return. If investigators obtained a subpoena for Barry's phone and car data for an extended period, they might be able to link him to the location where Suzanne's remains were found. For now, Barry appears to be cleared of suspicion, but the police and district attorney's office continue to investigate the case. The 12th Judicial District's district attorney told CNN that the case remains open and no further comment can be made until more information becomes available, while offering condolences to Suzanne's family. Barry's lawyer has spoken out strongly since the body was found, suggesting that Suzanne might have been a victim of a serial killer because her remains were discovered in a graveyard with many other bodies. She thinks the police wrongly accused Barry and hopes they will eventually admit their mistake. Meanwhile, Barry has filed a $15 million lawsuit against the prosecutors, sheriff's departments, and investigators, claiming they wrongly accused him of being involved in his wife's disappearance and death.